Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Menlo Park City Council meeting for Monday, July 15th, 2019. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We're going to go, and let me go ahead and please introduce everyone. So down off the dais to our immediate left is our city attorney, Bill McClure. To his immediate right is our city manager, Ms. Starla Jerome Robinson. Here on the dais to my far left is Councilmember Catherine Carlton. To my immediate left is our Vice Mayor, Cecilia Taylor. To my immediate right is Councilmember Betsy Nash. To her immediate right is Councilmember Drew Combs. And then just off the dais, we have our City Clerk, Ms. Judy Herron. If anyone has any any comment they'd like to make on any of the agenda items, if you could please fill out a card and provide those to Ms. Herron as soon as you can, so we go ahead and know to call you when that item is up for discussion. At this time, if everyone could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. So as this meeting this evening is a special meeting tonight, there is no initial opening public comment. So we're going to go ahead and move right to the consent calendar. Does anyone have any item that they would like to pull from the consent calendar this evening? Items D1 and D2. Okay, so items D1 and D2 will be pulled from the consent calendar. Vice Mayor Taylor pulled them. So then can I go ahead and have a motion on item D3? Actually, D3 has been moved to regular business, so that's not there. So let's go ahead then and discuss item D1. Vice Mayor Taylor. Actually, before we have you ask your question, is there any public on item D1? No. Vice Mayor Taylor. We'll go ahead and direct them to Starla if she wants to pull someone up.
Okay. Thank you. My first question on item D1 is it possible to have an itemized budget attached to it?
I can definitely request that.
Okay, thank you. My second question is the subsidy that was the increase in subsidy of 18.2%, is that based on the enrollment only, or is that other additional cost or increase in costs?
From my understanding, the subsidy actually remained the same from last year to this year. From
2015 to
from
currently.
The state subsidy, are you asking, or are you
yes,
talking about the general
the
funds?
state subsidy.
Last year it was $1,011,860, and this year it's actually the same.
From 2015, it was 7,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said from 1819 to 1920.
From 2015 to now, the increase.
Oh, 2015 to now. That is usually as you're bringing in additional students and actually spending more for the program, whether it's parent education, the state actually, you can request an additional reimbursement.
Okay.
And right now the program's at capacity with 96 students.
Okay. My other question is about attachment B. Within the document it says see attached under optional use. It's right underneath child development programs. So is that an attachment from the state or an attachment from the city?
That is a good question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Okay. And then my last question is it possible in the future to attach the master policy? So whatever the original agreement is.
Sure.
Because the only reason I'm asking is because I've never seen it.
Absolutely. So if I'm correct, we will attach the itemized budget, the master policy, and then I'm going to clarify what the attachment is on what they're referring to on attachment B.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have a question, too, about
Sure.
this item. So just so the record's clear for the public, the city's taking $719,814 from the general fund for this program. Is that what this staff report is saying?
Correct.
So it's approximately $7,498 per student of the 96 students?
Correct.
Okay. And that's to provide to 96 students that live in what part of the city?
Most of them are all in the Bellhaven neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just so we're clear on that, we cannot restrict participation. So they could, we've had students enrolled because the parents work in the area from all over.
Correct. But the requirements are really strict. So you have to either be going to school, looking for work, unable to be working, or your family has to meet very strict state requirements to qualify.
Okay, so the only other question I had is when I look at this, the average number of years, so from 2000, so if you look at 2012 to 2014, the average amount, I see, excuse me, a difference in the state and federal subsidy in the amended program budget of about 550,000 each year. Then from 2016 2018 it jumps to an average of 650,000, and then from 2018 to 2020 it jumps up to 700,000 average per year. And what I'm trying to figure out is why is that, and how do we get that back to what the traditional was?
500,000. Well, I will take a look. I know, just from looking at this right here, it looks like when we first started the program, there were fewer subsidized slots, but I will definitely find out what the difference in the subsidy is.
That's great, because for it to be sustainable, I want to at least to look for that to top out and
Sure.
just stay stable. So trying to figure out why it's growing each year is important to figure out.
Okay.
With that, any other questions? Yeah, Councilmember Carlton.
I'm wondering, I remember a few years ago we changed the way the budgeting was done, that some of the budget that was accounted in one area moved to another. And I'm wondering if that's not the change, that it was a change in budgeting, the way that it's reported out. So I'm just giving that to you as you
A
might
starting
look into
point.
that.
That's
Yeah.
really helpful.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on this item? Okay, let's go ahead and if I can have a motion. Councilmember Combs has made the motion. Mayor Pro Tem Taylor has made the second. We can all vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and move to the next item, D2. Vice Mayor Taylor.
Mayor Mueller, we do have public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and take public comment from Ms. Willison.
Good evening. Happy summer, City Council. Jen Wallison, and I'm thrilled to see that a Transportation Management Association exploration is commencing. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to echo Adina Levin's letter that she wrote in to make sure that when we're looking at small businesses and mid-businesses, we're not overlooking the Bayfront area, because the model might not be exactly like the Google Mountain View model. So to look at geography as well as size, kind of when splicing and dicing the different types of TMAs. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Taylor.
That was actually the exact comment I was going to make, just about outreach.
Thank you. Councilmember Carlton.
Thank you for pulling this. I wanted to also say that, but I wanted to go a step further. We need to look at, they're not only big businesses in Bayfront, they're small businesses who in aggregate can make an impact. And I'm also very concerned, and I spoke to Adine about this as well, we need to make sure that we include Stamford, not only in the downtown area for what they're building on El Camino Real, but we've seen through the GUP that what they're building just on the edge of our city is going to significantly impact Sand Hill Road and Alpine Road and the other streets. And as we start looking at those, we need to also include things that may be just outside of our city, and yet there's still large schools, companies that we need to bring in to address the impact that they have on our transportation as well. Also, I forgot, I also wanted to encourage, I didn't see here on the list of people that they're working with, the Chamber of Commerce, which may seem obvious, but sometimes obvious things get forgotten. And I want to make sure that on the, I believe it's 3.2, I have to put my glasses on, 3.1.2, they list local business community, all this. Make sure that they also work with the Chamber of Commerce because they're proactive, good people, and are a good representative sample of what we need to be working with. That's all I had. Is that just general guidance that we're giving, or is someone...
So so right now there's also the Manzanita talks taking place, and so what I'm really interested in for the coming out of this process is right now in the Manzanita talks, the ones that I've attended, there's a discussion about sharing the buses that our employers are using to help allow for residents in our city to go, as we've talked about, Vice Mayor Taylor, to go further than just our typical shuttle stops within the city. I think it's really important through this TMA process to talk about how we can go ahead and take advantage of vehicles that are already on the road that aren't filled to capacity, and also extend out the reach of what's available to people via that alternative mass transit. And so within that TMA process, I'm really looking for that public-private collaboration to try to get us to that further exit point, but also just to get more people into those vehicles because they're going to be traveling anyway. So let's use what's on the road and reduce traffic that way. Councilmember Nash.
Just to add to that, the reverse commute when the bus is basically empty would also be beneficial to residents.
Excellent. Okay, with that, we can go ahead and have a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into professional services. We have the motion. Second, Councilmember Carlton. Motion was made by Vice Mayor Taylor. Let's go ahead and vote.
Do we need to do anything to include this?
Great, excellent.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. We're going to go ahead and move on now to regular business item E3. Adopt Resolution 6512 identifying those discretionary projects approved by the Planning Commission to be appealed by the City Council as a matter of course. We have Assistant City Attorney Kara Silver who will make the presentation, and accompanied by Ms. Chow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to be presenting on E3, which is automatic appeal of Planning Commission decisions. We'll be discussing the background on this particular item, the current appeal process that's set forth in the municipal code, staff's recommended changes to the appeal process, and then we will be asking for policy direction on various exemptions for special circumstance projects, such as housing projects, retail projects, and hotel projects. The requested City Council direction is for you to adopt a resolution pre-authorizing the automatic appeal of all large or impactful projects to the City Council. We will be asking for direction on how to define large or impactful projects in terms of triggers for appeal. And then also we will be soliciting your input on whether additional projects should be exempt from the automatic appeal process. So in terms of the background on this item, this originated with the June 11 City Council discussion on the moratorium, which was agendized at the request of Mayor Pro Tem Taylor and Councilmember Nash, who asked for a discussion of a moratorium on citywide development, on non-residential development, and then a moratorium on housing developments over 100 units in District 1. The rationale for that moratorium request was a concern about the amount and pace of development in the city, and also a desire to examine the current policy documents to ensure that they reflect current community values. As a result of that robust discussion, the council decided not to adopt a moratorium at this time, but instead took two actions. One was to form 2 different subcommittees to look at development issues. One subcommittee was tasked with looking at development issues in District 1, and the other subcommittee was tasked with looking at development issues in Districts 2 through 5. The committees were broken out that way due in large part to conflict of interest concerns, so that appropriate members could participate in committees. And we will be hearing reports from those 2 subcommittees later on in the agenda. The second action that came out of that discussion on the moratorium was that the City Council recommended that staff pursue an item that would bring up larger impactful decisions to the City Council so that the City Council could be the final decision maker on those projects. So staff did 2 different things to examine what types of projects would be appropriate for review by the City Council. And in reviewing this, the staff looked at, in general, 3 categories of projects that typically come before the city. The first category of projects are non-discretionary projects. Sometimes we refer to these as ministerial projects. They typically are approved at a staff level or an over-the-counter basis. They require conformance to objective standards. And if the objective standard is achieved, then the permit is granted. So if a building hits 30, is below 30 feet, it meets that objective standard and a permit is typically issued. There's really no personal judgment involved. An example of this is a single-family home on a conforming lot. The second element or category of projects that we looked at were the projects that typically come to the Planning Commission for final approval. Like with all cities that have separate planning commissions, the Planning Commission has discretion over a fair number of projects, and then that the Planning Commission will serve as the final decision maker unless an applicant or a member of the public appeals the decision to the Planning Commission. In Menlo Park, we also have a process where a member of the City Council or the full council can appeal a Planning Commission decision. Sometimes that's referred to as calling up the planning decision. These types of discretionary projects require personal judgment, and the standards tend to be more subjective and require certain findings be made. Examples of these types of projects are projects in the life science or office districts, which require architectural control. Also, projects in the O district for office buildings over 250,000 square feet require conditional use permits, which are considered discretionary permits, which the Planning Commission approves or acts on. The third category of projects involve discretionary projects subject to City Council approval. These are projects also which require personal judgment, but they tend to be larger in size and involve a more diverse set of entitlements. So you will typically see things like major subdivisions, rezonings, general plan amendments, development agreement requests, or master plan, which requires a conditional development permit. An example of this type of project is the Facebook West campus expansion, which this council acted on. We also looked at the current appeal process in our code, and as I mentioned, the code authorizes the Planning Commission to be the final decision maker on most discretionary development decisions, and the code authorizes 3 different methods for appealing the Planning Commission decision to the City Council. The City Council may make a motion within 15 days of the Planning Commission decision. Also, an individual council member may call up the City Council the Planning Commission decision and ask the council as a whole whether they want to endorse the appeal. If the council as a whole decides not to endorse the appeal, the individual council member may decide to move forward with the appeal to the city council, and they would need to then post the appeal fee on an individual basis. And then finally, our code is very broad in terms of allowing any other person to appeal a planning commission decision. Some codes limit it to members of the public that are affected by the decision, but our code allows appeals to be made by any member of the public and, of course, by an applicant who is aggrieved by the planning commission decision. So with those two frameworks in place, what staff is recommending to effectuate council's intent that large or impactful projects be reviewed by the city council is that staff thought that it would be good to look at two different types of projects, of course, non-residential development and then residential development. And staff believes that, of course, the projects that come to you in any event because it's a large project that requires a zone change or a development agreement, you don't need to authorize an automatic appeal for that type of project because it comes to you in any event. Also, on the other end of the spectrum, the ministerial or non-discretionary actions we did not think needed to come to you either because they don't really involve any personal judgment. They're not policy-related issues. They're just, straight objective standards. If you meet the objective standard, a permit is issued. So we didn't think that there was a need for the council to review those types of decision and set a false expectation that there was some discretion involved in that type of decision. So again, we focused on that mid-tier of projects which were approved by the Planning Commission that involved some discretionary action. And we thought that it would be wise to, as to non-residential projects, establish two different triggers. The first trigger would be any project that was seeking bonus level development. This would be a bonus level development project would be a community amenity in exchange for additional development above the base level. And those types of projects, bonus level development is really only authorized in the El Camino Real downtown specific plan area and the Bayfront area. So in order to capture other areas of town, we thought that an additional trigger would be appropriate. And so we thought that that additional trigger could be based on square footage. And it's up to you to determine what type of, what square footage trigger would be appropriate. One approach is a 10,000 square foot net new trigger, which would be equivalent to the standard that the city uses to prepare a transportation impact analysis. So that's square footage where the city has determined is large enough to warrant some additional type of analysis with respect to traffic. And there is, another square footage trigger could be 50,000 net new. It's really up to you what square footage should be triggered. When you look at this, though, you do want to distinguish between net new development. So if there's an existing building and the building adds some additional FAR, Generally, we just look at the additional increment, and that refers to the net new. And so when you look at square footage, it's typically what net new square footage is being added to the existing square footage. Then, with respect to residential development projects, staff is proposing that all 100% residential projects, as well as mixed-use projects which contain at least 2/3 of the square footage dedicated to residential projects, be exempt from this automatic appeal process. And the rationale for that is that state law currently, the Housing Accountability Act, limits the city's discretion to approve or deny certain residential development projects. And so, again, we don't want to set up a false expectation with the community that a project can actually be denied when, in fact, the state law limits the city council's discretion to deny those projects. So we recommend carving out 100% residential housing projects, as well as projects containing 2/3 residential development. And that 2/3 metric is taken from the Housing Accountability Act to sync up with the state law. However, we did think that if we had a concern that assuming a mixed-use project met one of the non-commercial triggers, either the square footage trigger or the bonus level trigger, if an applicant were to add 1 or 2 housing units to that project, they could essentially evade automatic council review. So we're recommending that projects that contain less than 2/3 square footage for housing be subject to the automatic appeal. And so that's essentially just to avoid that potential loophole. We also wanted to point out that under SB 592, which is the SB 50 Gut and Amend bill that is being sponsored by Senator Wiener, that it is still possible that even projects that contain 1 or 2 housing units, if the bill passes, could be subject to some limitations on the city's ability to actually deny those types of projects because they include a housing unit within them. Again, that bill has not yet passed, but we wanted to flag that issue for you. One other issue for council discussion is whether you wanted to include any special exemptions from this automatic appeal process. For instance, if you want to encourage retail or hotel projects or child care centers, eating establishments, movie theaters, etc., you may not want to subject those projects to an automatic appeal. Of course, the more process that is attached to a project is viewed as by the applicant as a deterrent to moving forward these types of projects. So that's something that we have flagged for consideration. And even if you do exempt those projects, of course, the code requirement or the code allowances for any member of the public to appeal projects would still be in effect. So to summarize, the proposed resolution, which is attached as Exhibit A to your packet, is to adopt a resolution pre-authorizing the automatic appeal to the City Council of all large or impactful projects approved by the Planning Commission anytime after July 16th. And we're recommending that resolution be in effect through November 2020. and that it apply to bonus level projects, projects exceeding a certain square footage to be determined by the council at this hearing. And then also assuming that the criteria applies to mixed-use projects, one of the triggers applies, projects with less than 2/3 residential would also be subject to an automatic appeal. And then the question that we have for the council to consider is whether there should be any additional exemptions that would be not subject to this automatic appeal process. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Ms. Herron, do we have any public comment on this item? No. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it up here for questions and comments. Any council member have any questions? Councilmember Nash.
What is the approximate number of discretionary development projects if that would require action if we were to do the automatic appeal at, let's say, 10,000 square feet net new and then at 50,000 square feet net new? Any idea of how many projects?
Hi, thank you. So exempting bonus level development, so if they were bonus, automatically goes, are you looking at all projects that are 10,000 regardless of base or bonus?
Well, if it's a bonus, then it'll automatically come, right? Any sort of bonus projects in the Bayfront or in the downtown specific plan would come by what is being proposed, correct?
Correct. That is correct, yes.
Yeah. So then if we're talking about net new, so we're talking about then projects outside of those specifically zoned areas, like if it is, well, I guess then, is there any project that you know of outside of those designated areas that is, proposing 10,000 in net new? Mm-hmm. We can start off with the lower benchmark.
Sure. So I think there's sort of two categories. If it's a base project in either the specific plan or the Bayfront area that exceeds 10,000 square feet, and then also areas outside of those two areas that are over 10,000 square feet. So let me count.
Obviously not exempt for residential.
Yes. So maybe we can answer another question while I take a look at our list. But the numbers will be few at 10,000 square feet net new.
I'm sorry, the numbers will be
few.
Few. Okay.
Yes.
And then presumably fewer at 50,000. So.
Yes.
Councilmember Combs, any more comments? Anyone have any more comments or questions? Councilmember Carlton.
Just as a follow-up to Councilmember Nash's question, few, I'm not really sure answers the question. At least it doesn't answer the question that came to my mind. One could take a year. It's kind of how long is a piece of string. I think the nature of the question, as I understand it, is how much more work, how much more things are we going to be asking staff and are we going to be reviewing that we currently do not? What's the gap between, do you see what I'm saying? Not just in numbers, but in time, impact. I don't know if you can even answer that question, but that's kind of what I'm curious about. I hadn't thought about it until you asked the question.
Sure. So in terms of time and staffing resources, I do believe that it will take a considerable amount of time. Just for the Bayfront area, most of the projects that we do have in the pipeline are bonus level, and so under the proposed scenario, those projects that may have stopped at the Planning Commission as the final decision-making body would require an additional meeting, additional staff report, potential changes if there are recommendations by the Planning Commission that we need to work through. So there are definitely projects that would have required City Council approval, like Willow Village would have required City Council approval. there's a Gray Star project for a residential of condominiums and apartments, and if they go forward with a subdivision, a major subdivision, that would come before the City Council. But other projects, such as Life Sciences Building in the LS District, those would not be subject to City Council, so those projects would come before you under this proposed scenario. In the specific plan area, there are some projects. One is, for example, the new hotel that is proposed at the Red Cottage Inn site, the Hampton Inn, that would be subject as a bonus level project, would be coming before the City Council. That could potentially have stopped at the Planning Commission. There are some other mixed-use projects that we need to clarify if they do meet that two-thirds vote. If they don't, not two-thirds, excuse me, the two-thirds square footage for residential. If they do meet that, then they would be coming before the City Council, where they would have stopped at the Planning Commission. So there are those projects there that would require additional staff time, a month or two, in addition to where it might have stopped before, just for the noticing requirements and agenda management. But as far as an all-office or a non-residential project, there aren't too many that aren't in the bonus level development. I think we're aware of potentially some other smaller projects out in the Sharon Heights area that may be subject to that additional 10,000 square foot area.
So I'm kind of a visual person. I put everything in Excel. Are we talking about, to keep at the same pace, 1 or 2 additional FTE, or without the additional FTE, we're talking about getting 2-3 months behind? Like, how functionally does that work? Because I understand what you're saying, I can't visualize what the impact might be.
And I think we need to sort of reassess our resources and reassess what the council is providing the direction of in terms of what projects, and then in consideration with our work plan items as well. I think that will also impact what the potential time delay or the additional resources that would be required to move forward with these projects.
Okay, thank you. I know it's difficult to know what's coming beyond the initial things. Thank you.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, and this may be a shot in the dark, but so one project that comes to mind that came to the council, and it was a decision on Planning Commission appeal to the City Council, was the the Middlefield project next to the Willows Market. I can't remember the exact address. 40 Middlefield. And so do you have an estimate of, so that was something that obviously went to the Planning Commission and then became a subject of a City Council agenda item. Do you have some sense of like how many additional staff hours was spent on that project between the Planning Commission meeting and the presentation before City Council?
I don't off the top of my head, but we do keep track of our time, so we could provide that additional data. But it does require, I know there was, communications with the applicant, certainly on the applicant team side. There was additional, I think, meetings that, they were trying to conduct with the community in order to help come to a resolution. And then writing the staff report, attendance at the City Council meeting. And so there's some time involved.
All right, so any other questions, comments? No? Yeah, Vice Mayor Taylor.
I have a question about the presentation. You made a comment about the Facebook West Campus, or is it the Willow Village project that you were referring to? Were you referring to a project that's already in process or a project that may come before us?
Right. So I used as an example, I believe, a project that that typically comes to the City Council as a discretionary project, but it still comes to the City Council, and so there is no need to subject it to an automatic appeal process. And I think the staff report referred to the Willow Village as one of those projects, and then in my presentation I mentioned the Facebook West project, which had previously come to the council as a type of project that would not be subject to this automatic appeal process because it comes to you already.
So the West, Facebook West is actually the expansion project?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted for clarity. I have the chart that was given to us, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And so I'm looking at the projects that are over the 10,000 square feet. There are 5 in District 1, and there are 2 in District 3, and 1 in District 4. Looking at the residential, it has on here negative square footage. Does that mean because the property hasn't been zoned for residential, the reason why it's in the negative?
Yes. So I believe we're referencing a chart that was attached with the moratorium staff report. Is that?
This one says pending projects, new construction, and/or additions.
Yes. So if there's a negative number, that typically indicates that what's existing today is greater than what is being proposed. So there is square footage that is being put back into the pool.
Even though the square footage there for residential never existed?
So can you give me an example?
So I'm looking at the, I'll use the Constitution or the Independence. They're both negative. The 180 Constitution has a negative 108,411 square feet. So if there was never residential there before, are you taking the total square footage of the current office and then the total and then subtracting it that way? How do you come up with that number?
Right, so that negative 108,000, so that's net new non-residential square footage. So the existing buildings today are non-residential square footage, which exceed the 2,000 square feet of non-residential square footage that is being proposed. So it's moving from a non-residential development to a residential development. So you'll see an addition to the proposed residential square footage of 470,000 square feet of residential, but they're putting back the non-residential square footage because it's being replaced with residential square footage.
Okay, and going back to District 1 specifically, so the majority of the projects on the list are for bonus.
That is correct. So all of them are bonus with the exception, I believe, of the 2 hotel projects. One of them was previously approved as part of the Facebook West Campus expansion project, and so they are looking to increase what was previously approved, so that would come before the City Council as a conditional development permit amendment. And the other is Hotel Moxie, and as the Assistant Attorney mentioned, and the Bayfront area, there is not a base and bonus level development regulations for hotel, so it's I guess just base. There's no bonus for Hotel Moxie.
And then for clarity, the One Facebook Way Citizen M is the hotel that was previously approved, the Facebook hotel.
That's correct. It was approved for 200 units, and they're looking to increase that number to 250.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah. So I think we may all be operating from the same page and assuming the same things, but just sort of for the sake of clarity, obviously with regards to if we're looking at the downtown specific plan and Connect Menlo, there was this decision to make the Planning Commission the final decision-making body, right? As staff, can you sort of walk me through what you understood sort of the decision behind that, the decision-making behind that decision? What was council seeking to accomplish with making the Planning Commission the final decision-making body?
Certainly. So through the Connect Menlo process, one of the themes that we often heard was we wanted to have some clarity and consistency in the application through the process. And so part of that was to give some certainty to the applicant, but also to the city. And so we established both development standards, which you see in across the city, but we also established other enhancements, if you will. So design standards, which talk about modulation and height, and we added the green and sustainable building regulations to address, current topics. And so those were other standards that we added to provide that level of assurance that we were going to be getting things that were of value to the city council in the city of Menlo Park. And so they established development standards to give the applicant, like, hey, if I can meet our setbacks, if I can meet our design standards, if I can provide our community amenities that were established through the list, it would give some assurances that we would go through a planning commission, and that was the appropriate process. Certainly things that didn't change with Connect Menlo were the things that required city council approval, so zoning amendments, things that require a CDP. So if I'm asking for greater height or reduced setbacks, things that were exceptions to the rule, those still required city council approval, and those did not change through the Connect Menlo or the specific plan process.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So what I've struggled with is that with this is, number one, I do see that the council wants to be looking at these things, but what the issue comes down to is procedure. Whether or not we are creating undue procedure in instances when council actually doesn't want to review, and whether or not we have appropriate procedure for when council does want to review. In the current circumstance, what happens in the experience that I've had, and I'm sure that Councilmember Carlton has had on council, is that things are approved by the Planning Commission, and at council we have our workload, they have their workload, and we might find out about that either through staff or through a newspaper article, but we're not always aware of what's on their agenda or docket, and sometimes discover after that fact. And whether it's after 15 days can be problematic in the current circumstance we find ourselves in now. When I think about the issue of procedure in this circumstance, I almost think of it like a writ of cert that would go from one court to another, and whether or not the court wants to take up that issue. If we, or it can just say we don't want to take up that issue, and it can let it die. I think that's more of the process that I would be looking at, that I think makes sense here at the council, is that basically what would happen is there would be an ongoing process whereby the agenda that goes before the Planning Commission and the decisions before the Planning Commission, basically the materials in the decision would go to the council members. The council members would be told in that communication, you have until this day to say you want to take this up. Any one single council member can say they want to take it, and it would come to us. Otherwise, it would die, and we wouldn't waste staff's time with it. We wouldn't waste our time with it. Councilmember Combs, you look like you're going to hit your button.
Yeah, so I'm not saying I am fully in support of that idea, but if we sort of play that out a little bit, and this is a question for the city attorney, could you have a scenario where, setting up these triggers in an approval by the Planning Commission that, again, fit one of these triggers, then became an information item for the next city council meeting, and then so an information item, and then that, when it became an information item for the next city council meeting, could start a 15-day period of appeal for either a member of the city council or the public. Because I'll just say, what I want is some sort of public record of which there is clear accountability. An email sent to city council informing them of a planning commission decision and their right of appeal, to me, doesn't provide that transparency that we clearly then sort of, it was on the agenda, there was a meeting.
If it went to the city CCIN email listserv so the public could see when we were sent that and that we have the opportunity. My concern is that if you wait for it to appear on a city council agenda, we don't have 5 weeks for our next city council agenda. Yeah. The next planning commission meeting is Monday. And so you want to have it timely with when that decision was made. But I'll let the city attorney respond.
So it is theoretically possible to do what you've suggested. I would raise some questions about, there is the timing issue, and then extending the public's ability or any other person's ability to appeal during that same period. Then you'd end up, in this case, it could be, oftentimes the council goes 3 weeks. It's pretty unusual to go 5, but so if you had 3 weeks and then you had another 15 days on top of that for anybody to appeal, it's really extending out that process pretty lengthy, because then once there's an appeal, then it has to be set for a public hearing. We have to do a staff report, et cetera. So that's at least a month out. So you could end up extending that whole process by, about 3 months, when you factor all the time in.
Oh, just totally, totally fair and understand. I do want to just sort of point out again, we are talking about very large and impactful projects, right? So it is so this idea that like maybe it's a month process or maybe it's 45 days. It is not, like we're talking about the use permit on someone's non-conforming lot, and thereby them like having to, we're talking about projects at the size of millions and millions of dollars, and so I'm not sure I quite accept that there is some great travesty in the delay, but I'll let you.
I'm not suggesting there's a travesty, but there are some statutes and some cases that indicate that we have to act timely, and so the concern is that by having a process that extends too long a time period, there is potential exposure to that in terms of not acting timely. But the other thing is that it also depends on what your triggers are. If it's 10,000 net new square feet, that isn't a huge project. I mean, if 10,000 square feet is not huge, unless it's, not unless anything. If it's a 50,000 square foot building and it's being replaced by a 60,000 square foot building, again, that's not a huge project because it's just that net new square footage. So it really depends on what your triggers are. And so one other thing, and so if we went to that process, we probably need to amend the code because currently there's a statutory procedure and a timeliness that is baked into it, and that is kind of that's the standard appeal process, the 15 days from the action. It's pretty much, it follows what's recommended in the California Government Code. It's kind of the standard appeal period for, local jurisdictions all over the state of California. And so we would be amending that code section, and so we definitely would have to amend. The process that we've brought to you is something that doesn't require an amendment because it's an automatic appeal, so it meets the timeliness requirement. And so then, it would then be scheduled in due course for a public hearing before the city council. So it shortens that time period so that things can kind of move along the process.
I'm finished one just about. So to be candid, guys, I'm not wedded. If what people are looking for is a compulsory appeal based on standards, then I can go with folks on that. If instead we want to sort of have that intermediate step where we consider whether there's a compulsory notification, but there's consideration before the appeal is agendized, that's fine too. I just wanted to offer that as an alternative to what's in front of us now and I wasn't even going to offer it as an alternative until I started to hear those concerns from all of you this evening and then started to think, well, maybe there is that alternative to consider. But certainly where people are, as they feel more comfortable with the compulsory appeal for a specific type of project, that's fine. That's where we are. Councilmember Carlton.
I was really happy to hear what you said, Mayor Mueller, because I think you and I had come to the same conclusion. And it's the idea of mandatory. There's so many things that we mandatorily have to review that we have to approve things that are given to us by the state. And when I first got into council, I was like, why are we wasting staff time putting together a report for something that we have to approve anyway? And it was explained to me by Mr. McClure that that's just the way it goes. That's just life. And I don't want to put in another loop and another thing where it's mandatory for us to go through something if it doesn't have to be. And I like Mayor Mueller's idea of making sure, and it gets down to the process, that we are aware of everything. And so if there's things that we want to see, and probably 4 out of 5 things we will, but the one thing we don't have to have staff write the report and go through all the jumping through all the hoops on things that are kind of no-kidding things that just kind of check the box to be mandatory. Makes me nervous, and when it's sucking up a lot of staff time that we don't have right now. And I think as long as we make sure that we're all very aware of everything going through, we have something that's documented with CCIN, and we have it listed out in time for us to review this. And I mean like the day after. So, because sometimes we can't make a decision immediately. We need a couple of days to do our homework to decide ourselves. But I think that would make sense if we get it in a timely, intelligent, very clear, very transparent way so that we and everyone else know exactly what's going through. Also, I think it helps the residents because not everyone stalks the Planning Commission, and it gives us a second hit on being aware of what's coming out of the Planning Commission, and it kind of shuffles out. You know, my kids have the Lego thing that you shuffle through to get all the little Legos out to get the big pieces. This is a similar thing in terms of being able to communicate not only with us, but also with the public to bring to their attention the larger projects as they come through.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, a couple of comments. First, I want to thank staff for that presentation and for the report. I appreciate that it was a lot of work and it was a quick turnaround, and so it is certainly noticed, and I very much appreciate the effort. So I'll start off by saying I don't come to this debate with one, solidified opinion. So I certainly can see myself working towards what the mayor has proposed. But if we're looking at this issue, there is no one issue that seems to me of greater import for the people in the city at the moment than development and the impacts of development. It is the zeitgeist, and so for me, that would suggest to me then that there is no aspect under the duties of the city council at this moment that is more important than those projects that go to those impacts of large development. And so for me, putting, and I appreciate that it's a process that creates, that is mandatory and creates additional work for staff, additional work for us. But if what we're seeing out there in the community today is a lot of concern and angst, again, over development and the impact of development, I think that it is really not much for residents to ask that those that they actually elected be the final decision makers when it comes to those very large projects of which they're having increasing concern with. So for me, that's the other side of that argument that I think it's important to take note of. Again, saying that, like I said, could make my way towards I think what the mayor is proposing, but that there is that other issue that we have large scale projects that will make their way through a sort of a review process, and city councils not be the city council not be the final decision makers, and I think for some residents that is a concern.
Yeah. So speaking of that, certainly. So I was sort of trying to find a middle ground. It's not something that came in to propose, and but I want to make something clear. I'm not proposing that we not review the projects. And when you're looking at a situation where a court gets a writ of cert, they do review it. So what I would be saying is it's compulsory notification with a file that would come to every council member with with a public record of when it came to us, and with that comes the assumption we're going to look at it and we're going to review it, and if you want to pull it, you can, and if you don't pull it, it means you didn't want to pull it. But in that way, what we could do is we would have an individual mandate for us to decide whether or not we wanted to pull something prior to, and someone having to actually pull the lever prior to staff having to go through all the trouble and the applicant having to go through all the trouble, come and give a presentation. Now, we don't have to do that. We can say we want to do the whole thing, the whole council review in public, and that's fine too. I'm simply offering it as one solution that sort of already exists out there that would be a judicial process, I guess would be a quasi-judicial process. And that's why I'm sort of looking at it that way. Bill?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking, I always think in terms of what the existing code says and how this might fit within the existing code. I mean, we could establish a policy to notify the city council after the planning commission of what actions were approved as you define them. You decide what those you want specific notification. So the day after the planning commission meeting, send notice to the city council, links to the staff reports, and a 2 or 3 sentence summary of what the final action was by the planning commission. Link to the planning commission staff report because it was there the night before, and that action, and then the council, under the current code, any individual council member can appeal it. And so and the public has the same opportunity to appeal it. If you want that email notification to go to CCN, so that again, anybody who's watching CCN is also then aware of what that is and what the action was, then any individual council member can appeal it. You can have a standing, waiver of the appeal fee by any council member appeal, and that you can. Then it's semi-transparent, if you will, because it's to CCN. It's a policy, and it immediately follows, and it's within the existing, current appeal procedures.
So that's just one alternative, guys. I'm not strongly wedded to it, but I am giving you the alternative to consider.
I think it's a good alternative. I'm just
okay. Vice Mayor Taylor.
Thank you. Initially, I thought about the staff time and decided, well, the best thing to do is to not add any additional staff time. But the more I listen to everyone's input, I think about how we ended up here. What's the history behind it? This was as a suggestion because we requested, Councilmember Nash and I requested the moratorium. And when I look at this sheet and I see the overdevelopment of one area of Menlo Park, I think the majority of projects on here are bonus. Yes, I want to see it. So I want to have the option to vote on projects that wouldn't normally come before us. I want that option to amend the zoning and circulation element in Connect Menlo. So every opportunity I have to have an impact, a positive impact for my community, I'm going to take. So I support having some type of process where it comes before us. I already read the Planning Commission minutes. I read the Housing Commission, library. I read as much as I can because there's a lot going on. The fact is we have too much, too fast, too soon, and not enough phasing. And so some extra eyes on it I think is helpful. Not sure if the Planning Commission has had any input on this process. I believe that not all are in agreement. But did they have anyone on the Planning Commission have any suggestions for us? Or was there no input?
We didn't have time to take this to the Planning Commission. We could certainly do that.
Councilmember Nash.
I am wondering if by having things come directly to council, we will have public comments and all that. People who don't worry, who do not go to Planning Commission with their concerns and wait to come to council since we're the final decision, as opposed to if it's not an automatic appeal, then Planning Commission is the final decider. Public provides all their input there, and then if council pulls it up, then there's another opportunity. But I'm a little concerned, and I'm curious what others think about whether there would be less public input at the planning stage if we automatically appeal it to council, and if that's a concern.
So my guess is the ones that we're going to poll are probably pretty controversial to begin with. I'm thinking about one project in particular that would fall under this. It has a plenty plenty of comment at the Planning Commission, and we've gotten plenty of comment on it. It's not anywhere near us yet. So I think I think where it's going to get sort of in that gray area is going to be the project that we might not necessarily want to pull. That maybe there isn't a lot of public identification of it anyway. And it's going to be one of us jumping into the weeds of it and saying, I reviewed this one, and there's something I think the Planning Commission missed, and I want to pull it. Or we could have it be compulsory, where it's just because it meets a certain set of criteria. It's like the AI identified it and it's coming to us. Either one's fine. But I think what's going to be important is I think it's a balancing. I think both viewpoints are fine. I think it's a balancing test of policy. Do we feel like it's so important that we just want to grab everything now, or do we think that there's some ability that we have to do some bit of review amongst ourselves of what would be considered like a compulsory individual or opportunity for review before we pull it? I just think it just comes down between those two things, and I'm comfortable with either. I'm not, but both viewpoints are valid. Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to add. So I would certainly be amenable to this idea of, as a first sort of phase, testing out this email notification process, one that seemingly would have less impact, and so we could try it out, right, for some period of time, and see if it's not getting us, or for some reason if it's not working out, then you can go to what is, I think we would all agree, the certainly more burdensome undertaking of having these automatic appeals. But I did want to ask the vice mayor. So is that something that when you spoke, were you saying that you most want to see this automatic appeal system, or would you be okay with the email notification process, by which then you or anyone else could pull all of those things, or do you want it just as a matter of course to have to come to, if it meets certain triggers, to have to come to the city council?
Definitely as a matter of course.
Any other strong opinions on it?
Have we heard public comment yet?
We didn't have public comment on this item. Nope.
Okay. I feel pretty strongly that I agree with your suggestion. I think we can try it, and if it doesn't work, try it for 6 months, whatever, and then we can review it. But it seems to be an intelligent, balanced way of dealing with the issue. I think that we're all responsible adults, and we always read our information, our packets. And if this is part of that information that we get sent that we know we're responsible for reviewing, we will.
How do you guys feel? So,
and trust me, if it's going to be that big and people are concerned about it, we'll hear about it from the residents as well.
Just as a follow-up, we're not listening to the residents now. So, and as far as being responsible and balanced, well, my responsibility is to bring balanced growth into my community, and it's been overdeveloped. And the projects on the list clearly show that. And then when you drive back there, you can see it.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that I have a problem with the mandatory, that they will all be reviewed, and they all should be reviewed, but not all of them are so controversial that they require a full hearing by council.
So do you read the Planning Commission documents now?
Guys, we're not going to do this. We don't question each other from the dais. But Councilmember Nash. Yeah, sure. Councilmember Combs.
I hear where the vice mayor is coming from and her concern. Like, is there, so in theory, under what seemingly the mayor has proposed, then you get to pull all of those proposals, all of those developments that meet certain triggers. You then get to say, you can say, like, I have a policy that everything in District 1. I have a personal policy. Everything in District 1 that meets these triggers, I'm just going to say, hey, let's bring it to City Council. And so, in a way, I does that sort of seem to address? I mean, maybe it doesn't. I don't want to sort of like, you know.
We could do that as a split. We could say everything in District 1 comes automatic.
So for me, what it sounds like is going around what I originally asked for. It's going around the moratorium. It's going around amending the general plan. It's going around it. And so instead of bringing 5 projects to the city council, why not amend the general plan so you don't have to do that? To me, all of these substitutes are to go around what was originally asked for. And there's other issues that go along with reviewing these 5 projects. For me, I'm really concerned about environmental justice. I'm concerned about air quality. When is that going to be a priority? 6 months, a year? And so for me, every opportunity that I have to have input and impact, I'm going to take it. So if you only want to give me crumbs, even though there's a cookie there, well, I guess I have to take the crumbs. But that's my position.
All right, so moving on from that, maybe it makes sense that a compromise position could be that we would say everything in District 1, meeting specific criteria, could fall under the resolution for automatic review. And then the rest of it, we could go ahead and if that's okay with everyone, say we can go ahead and have the notification process. Is that I have to ask the city attorney if that's even allowable.
Again, I think we just need to make sure that we have criteria that are established, and if it's every bonus level project, we just need to make sure we're clear what comes. So if an applicant comes through for architectural control to change the exterior appearance and they're not adding square footage, I'm assuming that's not something you want to come forward. So again, we just need to define what it is that would be coming forward, but that if that's the major concern, the development within District 1, it's certainly a way of addressing that piece of the concern, not the entire concern. It doesn't mean that as I understand it, you're going to have the subcommittee report, which in part is going to reflect whether and how we're going to go forward in looking at the general plan. But that's a different agenda item that's coming.
Councilmember Nash.
So I guess I'd like to have the discussion about the triggers because I'm thinking it might be useful to have a citywide policy, and perhaps it could be that anything bonus level across the city automatically is appealed, and we could make a decision on some of these other triggers, what actually comes through and what doesn't. But I think bonus level, I would agree that bonus level should come through, whether I do it as an individual appeal or if it automatically is appealed. That's I can work with either system. One of the things that I'm very concerned about is the jobs housing imbalance, and so one of the pieces that I would like to get is if we can see the number of employees anticipated for various projects, and employees meaning workers on site regardless of whether they are employees with the organization, contractors, service workers, whatever employees on site is what I'm interested in.
Councilmember Carlton.
Are each of these projects that would, I guess it depends on where we put the triggers, but would each of these have an EIR or be within an area like the downtown specific plan, or where an EIR has been done so that we can evaluate the impact on the environment? And
So every project has to have environmental review, whether it's an EIR, a negative declaration, or a categorical exemption. The decision-making body has to make a CEQA finding. And so projects that are within the specific plan area or the general plan area, depending on the specific size of the project and whether there are potential impacts that weren't considered as part of the specific plan or the Connect Menlo, they may have to do a full EIR. We did enter into a settlement agreement with the City of East Palo Alto that requires us for projects within Connect Menlo that if it's a bonus level project, it needs at a minimum a focused EIR for that project. So projects don't always require an EIR in the downtown specific, El Camino specific plan because the impacts
because they
may
were
have been
included in the
evaluated.
EIR that was done.
Right.
Right. I remember reading that.
Right. And then projects that are outside of those two areas, again, it depends on the size of the project and what is kind of the net new. The trigger for a traffic impact analysis is 10,000 square feet net new square footage. And so if it's larger than that, have to do a traffic impact analysis, which may then trigger doing an EIR if it indicates that there may be significant or the potential of significant unmitigated impacts.
Okay. Because I agree with Vice Mayor Taylor. You know, these things are important to all of us, and I agree. The jobs housing is critical, really critical. I've been reading that ABAG is going to increase our numbers significantly in the next few years, and that scares me, and the impact that's going to have on our city. And so the jobs housing information is really critical. The environmental information is really critical. All of that. I assume we will have a link when the information is given to us about the projects that we could follow through to get information about the impact reports, or will that be available to us in the city offices? How do we get that information? That jobs housing is fairly straightforward, but EIR and that type of information, I assume we can have a link through from the Planning Commission reports. I would really like to be able to make sure that we have that information available to council and the residents as they go through these.
Certainly, and even before the project, there's different phases of the project that the council will be notified when we do the notice of preparation, when there's a scoping session, during the draft EIR review. So there's different opportunities for the council to be aware of projects that are moving through the EIR process, and certainly we'll have those links available on project pages as well on our website.
Okay, great. Because don't understand, I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is it is feasible. I've seen throughout the city, sometimes there is a project that everyone thinks is really great. It's very non-controversial, and it happens that we can say, guess what, that one we're good with. And as I said before, 4 out of 5 we'll probably see. Probably 9 out of 10, maybe 19 out of 20 we'll see as they come forward, and that's fine. But it's just giving us the option of not seeing something. And I suddenly started feeling really defensive, and I want to make sure I get what you're saying, and I really do appreciate your concerns. I'm just giving us an option because mandate means we don't have the option of saying, no, actually, we're all good with that, and then moving on to be able to focus and really spend good staff time and council time and everybody's time really focusing on the things that really deserve our attention. And that's the only reason I say this, is it's just giving us a little bit of flexibility. It's not that I want anything to be kicked out, and it's not that I want anything important to not be reviewed, because to Councilmember Combs' point, that's why we were elected. This is our job. This is what we volunteer for every weekend reading, and it is very important that we go through these. I've just argued in support of Mayor Mueller's idea. It just gives us a little bit of flexibility so that we're not weighted under on a mandate. And I don't think that there's a problem with us seeing everything across the board, as long as I'm just worried about the one thing that just we consider a time waster and not having the ability to pass over that. That's the only thing.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, so I just want to put out there that I would be willing to go along with a resolution that set up a process for the email notification, with the triggers being bonus, 10,000 net new, since we're talking about email and not actual a mandatory review. I think I'll go with the lower standard of 10,000 square feet net new. And this is we're talking about non-residential, and then just for the sake of cleanness, I would not necessarily get into a detail about exemptions, again, because we're at this moment just talking about an email notification and not actual an agenda item before council. And
CCIN email, correct?
Yeah, CCIN
Thank you.
email. And also as part of the resolution that we revisit this issue in a year.
Councilmember Nash.
I was wondering if there's a difference in the time to implement between the two different methods of whether we do. It seems like emails we could implement immediately, and I had the impression that if we were to do an automatic implementation, there would be some sort of work that needed to be done to extend the time. No. Okay, so we could implement either of them tonight?
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
So can I just ask for clarification? So the email notification would only apply to non-residential?
Yeah, it'd be the same triggers essentially that was set up in what is the resolution, right? The resolution only applies to non-residential. So the trigger would essentially follow everything that's currently in the resolution, putting in 10,000 square feet net new where I think it is absent, and the only addition for me would be this mandatory. You're revisiting the issue in a year.
Right.
So this one's really hard for me, guys, because this exercise is about trust. So what we're doing now is trying to build trust in our process. And so I don't want to head down like a 3-2 vote on it. So what I'd like to do is see if there's any work that can be done to get us all to a unanimous agreement. And if that means that we move away from this item for a moment and take up another item and come back to it so people can think about it, I'm open to doing that if people want to do that. But it's important to me that we try to all be together. So I think that right now we're trying to be thoughtful in how we're approaching this for the community. And if it means that, and for staff. And I just don't think it's a good message to send on something that we're not together. I think we need to be together on it. So if we're not there yet, what I would actually propose is we move on to the next item and come back to it and give ourselves a chance to let it breathe. And then after that, we can go ahead and talk about it again amongst us. Does that sound all right? Because I don't think we're there right now.
Is there a way we could take a little bit of a straw poll, or we cannot if you don't think that if you think it's better for the later debate that we not straw poll now?
I don't want a straw poll because I don't want people to get locked in their positions and feel like they have to come off them. I think it just probably makes sense to take a break and maybe come back to it, if that makes sense to everyone. Yeah. All right. So what's our next item? Our next item is the establish a city council subcommittee to review current city council procedures and recommend updates. Item E4, Assistant City Manager Nick Pegueros will make the presentation.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Nick Pegueros. I'm the Assistant City Manager, and this evening we're asking for the City Council to establish a subcommittee to assist in updating the City Council's Procedures Manual. Typically, the City Council Procedures Manual is reviewed as part of the annual goal-setting session. However, this year we set the Procedures Manual for review at study session. As you could see in the packet, there are a variety of areas that we may want to explore should the council decide to dive into the actual procedures, which in some cases may have fallen out of line with what our actual practice is. In other cases may not necessarily reflect the current will of the council. So with that, we're just seeking the appointment of 2 council members to work with staff. The thought is that the subcommittee would work with staff on each individual procedure and then come back to the council with a recommendation for council discussion and decision. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No public comment on this item? No. I have one item that I'd just like to make a comment on that I'd like whoever the subcommittee is to please, we can sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get a sunshine policy into it. It was a council goal to have that be a separate thing when it could just be done through this process. I think could be accomplished and save time. So with that being said, who is any other comments? Councilmember Carlton.
I was going to volunteer to be on this. I'm not on one of the rezoning committees, so I have more free time, and I'm happy to take this on with someone else, whoever wants to work with me on it.
All right. Anyone else want to do it?
I have a question for Nick. So what do you think the timeline is for this? 3 months?
So the recommendation that's included in the packet would provide for the council to take its current procedure manual and break it up into several pieces which reflect chapters. This makes it more manageable and more timely. The chapters, for the most part, are independent of one another, so they don't necessarily rely on, they don't require a comprehensive view. My sense is that the goal would be to wrap this up by the end of 2019, so that we can have, so we can go into 2020 fresh. However, it all is reliant on council agendas and the ability to have that comprehensive discussion at the council level.
I'm happy to do this with CAT, guys. We can take what we both have learned from the last 7 years or 6.5 years and try to put it in there. Does that make sense? Councilmember Nash.
I'm just wondering if it's possible to actually pull it. That's wonderful if the 2 of you are on the subcommittee. Just to, if it would be possible to have segments come to the council earlier so that we don't have everything together at once and it's more manageable that way.
Sure.
No, that absolutely makes sense.
All right. Are we good with that? Everyone good? Okay. By acclamation. Excellent. Next item is, I think the next item we probably is E6. E5, which is E5? Oh, the work plan subcommittee. Okay. So, my thing is cut off. So City Council adopted 2019-2020 priorities and work plan quarterly update and verbal report from the City Council subcommittees on planning and zoning updates. Our Assistant City Manager, Nick Pigueros, will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, the City Council's work plan, 2019-20 priorities and work plan was adopted on March 5th. The work plan serves as a very important document in how the staff and council operate or conduct daily operations. First and foremost, the work plan informs the development of the budget, which the council adopted several weeks ago. The work plan allows us to strategically align resources to achieve the goals or the priorities of the council. On the staff side, I think perhaps one of the more important aspects of the work plan is it helps us define success. So we provide the council with a work plan and measurable milestones, and our ability to achieve those is I would say particularly important as we always like to keep working and going forward. The work plan is reviewed on a quarterly basis by the council, and in that way, and very much so, it's a living document. It's a document that's controlled fully by the council, and we look to you to provide us any changes that you would like to see in the document on a quarterly basis. Each year, the document or the work plan is reviewed by the full council during the goal setting process, which helps inform and create the product for the next year. This current year, we have 5 top priorities 8 work plan items, 2 study sessions. With this update, we are not recommending any action by the City Council on on the work plan. The reason for that is that when the City Council established the 2 subcommittees on June 11th, it was envisioned at that time that the outcome or recommendations of the subcommittees could influence heavily and the workload for the organization for at least the current calendar year, moving into the next fiscal year or moving into the next calendar year as well. The subcommittees are available to provide a verbal report to the council should the subcommittees desire to do that. At this time, with respect to the work plan and any amendments to it, we're not recommending any changes again because we feel that the direction from the subcommittees will have a significant bearing on our capacity and our ability to execute the full work plan. So we're waiting that feedback. Just very quickly, what staff is doing relative to the subcommittee's work for District 1. We have, as mentioned in the staff report, staff is working to identify options to monitor air quality, and we have committed to returning to the subcommittee in August with those initial results. And then, as noted in the staff report, we've begun the documentation of requests presented by residents of District 1 for changes or enhancements to city services. For districts 2 through 3, we've done some 2 through 5, we've done some additional research on the impacts of work that may be desired by or recommended by the subcommittee to the council on the upcoming housing element, specifically if we were to change or rezone parcels in districts 2 through 5, how that might affect the RENA in the next housing element cycle. With respect to next steps, staff will be meeting with the subcommittees to develop recommendations to the council. We hope to return to you by the end of August for that discussion. And then based on that discussion, we can then go into looking at amending the work plan should that be necessary. However, I do want to highlight that just given the timing where we are in the fiscal year, that it may be difficult for us to conclude any work that the subcommittees recommend to the City Council by the end of this calendar year, just given the timing of where we are and where we might get direction from Council. So with that, I would hand it over to the subcommittees to provide verbal reports should they desire to do so.
All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back up. Which subcommittee wants to go first?
Mayor Mueller, we do have public comment on this item.
I'm going to be treating the subcommittee reports as part of the report out, and then we'll move to public comments. So, Councilmember Nash.
So, Councilmember Combs and I met as recently as yesterday, and we have the following oral report. The non-residential development moratorium proposed last month was intended to give us a chance to assess the Menlo Park's jobs housing imbalance and policy responses. Today's jobs housing imbalance and traffic problems are the result of projects approved years ago. Now, of course, more are in the pipeline. Mitigating the impacts of rapid development is a big problem, and it is growing. The Subcommittee on Districts 2 through 5, Planning and Zoning, will identify barriers to the development of housing so that we can mitigate some of the adverse impacts of non-residential developments. We plan to review aspects of the zoning ordinance that may be obstacles to building more housing, including building heights, floor area ratios, on-site parking, and units per acre. We also plan to identify areas where we can change zoning uses to allow housing close to essential services and transit. We will explore building affordable housing on city land. We know we have finite resources, and we are obviously prioritizing within those constraints. Thank you.
Good. All right. Vice Mayor Taylor, did you want to go ahead and provide the report for the District 1 Subcommittee?
Thank you. I actually have the letter that I read during the night that Councilmember Nash and I proposed a moratorium. Each council member was given a copy of it, and there's also a copy for the public in the back. The subcommittee for District 1, we've met 3 times. The first time was June 25th. with the Menlo Park City staff, and then twice with the community, once on July 1st and the second on July 8th. And from our time with the community members, the concerns are still the same. Nothing has changed, which is why I decided to submit the letter that I submitted on June 11th for the request. So you can more than happy to read it. Thank you.
Okay, great. With that, we're going to go ahead and take public comment. First, let me see who we have. Public speaker is Ms. Bramlett.
Good evening, Council. I want to say I agree with Councilmember Coombs and Taylor regarding the public's concerns with development, and I would add our very pro-development focus. It is causing a lot of cascading problems that aren't being fixed, but yet we continue along. Even things that I think should have been tied to it, such as having guiding principles that had metrics and were actually measured, are still unaddressed. So I think if you want to objectively find out what residents think, I would suggest a city satisfaction survey. I think we're overdue for one from a qualified and respected firm. And then you would have objective data that may very well help the council goals. And I asked, too, in addition, that council would reconsider our pro-development focus in this town to serve the goal of revenue. I have carefully recently read the Connect Menlo reports and even the Connect Menlo EIR. There's a preponderance of evidence that this was our goal. If we found a way to not need so much money, I think that would be a good thing via development, especially development to serve the goals of revenue. I'm not against development, but I'm for balanced development and development that makes sense for the community. I also think that the residents could be more involved in helping to fix these problems. I recently wrote council a 5-page memo, and I attempted to be concise, but I've heard very positive feedback about that, including from Mickey Winkler, who carefully read it and commented. I know of people who are willing to help, and I think an immediate problem that needs to be worked on is the bonus level development process. The current value analysis for considering bonus level development is very focused on the amount of revenue generated for the city from the grant of a bonus level development. The analysis needs to be expanded to quantify all the benefits and liabilities from the proposal granting of a public benefit process or a public benefit bonus. And I've noticed that quite a few of the ERRs, which I recently realized I need to pay attention to, this isn't, I think, commonly known, talk about providing it later in the process after there's been a lot of momentum. So I think we have some immediate problems here that, in all fairness, should be fixed, and the residents would like to help. And that is, by the way, part of the Empower aspect of the ILG's public engagement protocol that we're now following. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramlett. Our next speaker this evening is Angie Evans.
Hi, guys. First, I just want to say thank you for calling a special meeting. You guys have a lot of things on your priority list, and I really appreciate you bringing all of these things back and having 2 meetings in 1 week. It allows us to not have that series of meetings that we had last year where we were here till 2 o'clock in the morning. So thank you. So I'm going to say what I say like almost every time we talk. We need more affordable housing downtown. I know it's like my mantra, but I'm going to keep saying it. And I think we especially need it on public land, like we talked about parking lots. If there's ever a remodel of the library right here, I think we have to talk about that here. And I don't actually care if it's through the downtown specific plan or by some decree, but I think what we really need to be talking about here is changing density and height limits. If we want to actually encourage some of that development in infill, in large plots, then we have to talk about density and height limits, and we have to talk about it now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not a year from now, not 2 years from now, but right now, because it's at the central part of what I think every one of these council members, I think you all believe that we need more equitable housing in Menlo Park. I think you do. And I think one of the ways you can do that is by changing the height and density limits, especially downtown. And I know you're going to talk about that in the next agenda item too, but I was listening to you guys and I was listening to us talk about the impacts of all of these different studies, and I wanted to make sure I said that here in this part as well. And I just want to say like one other part about it. So we all go on Facebook. I was on Facebook today, and I was posting this adorable picture of my kids, and I was like, oh, look, my kids. And I always use the hashtag suburbia because I live right here in suburbia. And after I posted it, I looked at it, and I was like, it's a picture of my daughters eating pouches, sitting on our stoop with their scooters. Like, there's nothing about, like, this being a single-family home with a backyard. Like, that's not what suburbia is to us. That's not what Menlo Park is to any of us. I think any of us who have lived here for a while or who have kids, like, Menlo Park is like Baronis on Sundays and eating the, like, amazing French toast, and it's going to Cafe Zoe's and getting coffee in the morning, and it's, like, going to the library story time, or, like, when you take those swim lessons at Burgess with your kids and they force you to dunk their head underwater and everyone's traumatized, like, that is what is living here. And we cannot let simple zoning changes like the height and densities here stop us from allowing other people to make this a home. That's all I have to say. That's the end of my rant because I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Karen Grove.
Hello, I'm Karen Grove, and I'm a member of the Housing Commission, but speaking for myself. And I also am going to just sound like a broken record, but my concern about the process that we're on, or the road that we're on, is that we're taking on more. It's a little bit like the perfect being the enemy of the good. I think it's very, very clear that all the problems that were discussed during the moratorium conversation are ameliorated by more housing downtown, especially affordable housing. So everything that Angie said. And I also think we need to be careful not to displace people when we upzone. And there are ways to do that. I'm sure we have excellent staff who can find that for you. It just needs to happen from the beginning. And finally, I want to remind you of the day that the youth came and spoke about their experiences with housing instability and homelessness. And people were crying. They were crying, and people listening were crying. So just kind of, I want to bring that into the room. And I don't think we have to be perfect, but we have to do something, and we have to do it with those youth in mind. So bias towards action, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more public speaker cards? No. All right.
Sorry, I need to put my mic down and then I'll put it in a card. Sorry about that. I'll take a public comment and put it in a card. My name.
Katie Baruzzi. Ms. Baruzzi.
Chiming in on housing density, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I looked up when I was at the corner of Valparaiso and University the other day and was like, holy hell, where did that come from? And there's 80 units on about 1.5 acres of land. The way our zoning in downtown works right now, that wouldn't be possible. I think I did the math and you could only fit like half or a third as many units on that land as you do. And yet I never noticed that building. And I guess my point is, that's not a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing for there to be 80 units somewhere within walking distance of a train station and restaurants and laundromats and coffee places, not just all tucked away by the freeway where we build a giant sound wall, but like closer to town. We have an aging population. who can't necessarily take care of their homes anymore. There was a case in Sharon Heights today, I think, a letter that got written in, the house that got bought in the 70s and has a sort of decrepit, decaying backyard. And I'm making up stories here. I don't know who owns it, but I could imagine it might be somebody who has a really valuable home, but not really anywhere to move in our community where it could be, they could live close to their kids. And I'd love to see us develop, again, within safe walking distance, more dense housing for seniors and for some of the other people in our community who currently have to drive long ways. I think that could really take some of the pressure off our housing, or, there are people who are trying to buy single-family homes now who can't really get into the market. The other thing I want to say is when I was looking into this, I was also looking back at the last time we redid the housing element, and there were something like 23 sites that we talked about all over town. And that was the month that like 1,600 emails got sent to CCIN. And they were from people living in Sharon Heights and from people living in Linfield Oaks and from people living in all these like developed neighborhoods, mostly on the west side of the freeway. And when all of the dust had settled, the places where we ended up, I believe, deciding to do housing tended to be on the Bayside and close to the VA. And it's not that those aren't good places to do housing. I just think that it's time to circle back around and look at how we can, again, add more density and add more housing in this community here where people can walk places and bike places and take public transit, and not overly burden one neighborhood at the expense of some of the other neighborhoods. So when we're looking at the downtown in particular, I'm really hoping that we can start opening that again, and seeing if we can't just make it fit a few more people in this within a mile of where we're standing, and then that will help take some of the pressure off everywhere else. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Levin.
All right, and thank you very much. So my name is Adina Levin. I'm a Menlo Park resident. I'm on the Complete Streets Commission, speaking for myself. And I think building on what a few people have been saying. So first of all, when I looked at the staff report, particularly looking at the thoughts about the downtown area, I was really dismayed because my understanding with the creation of the subcommittees was that the intent was really to shake things loose. City Council, this council and previous councils have expressed an interest in moving forward and looking at potentially having more housing and more affordable housing downtown and adjusting the rules to enable that to happen. And yet the staff report said, well, because we're having this subcommittee, that means that we can't look at changing the downtown plan until later. And so that had the opposite effect of what at least I was expecting and hoping. It was making it later and not sooner. I know I was part of some of the last the downtown planning, and there were some people who were quite skeptical of this, but I've been out canvassing over the last number of weeks, and the vast majority of the people that we are talking to are saying, I love living near downtown where I can walk to Trader Joe's and walk to the hardware store, and having more people being able to do that is good. I think we need to have that community conversation and have it sooner rather than later for the reasons that other people have mentioned. The other thing, and maybe it's just because it didn't get written down yet in the staff report, but something that council members have mentioned is concern about the jobs housing imbalance and how we're doing jobs more and more ahead of housing. And I did not see, at least in these staff reports, that we're gathering the data about that, figuring out where we are, figuring out how that is affecting creating displacement pressure, because people who can afford to live wherever they want to and want to live near their new jobs can displace other people. And so that is something that I was hoping to see forward motion on, and I'm not yet seeing on that. Another idea to put into the mix at a much less level of, I think those things are things that I was expecting urgency and would hope that council would move forward with greater urgency. I think that there's another idea that we're starting to see in places around the Bay Area and around the United States, is to look not only at accessory dwelling units, but other types of missing middle housing types like duplexes and triplexes and things that look like houses and don't look dismaying to someone walking down the block. It looks the same, but we hit more affordability price points. I think this would take our community a while to learn about and get used to, but I think that's something that we could start learning more slowly. Thank you.
Ms. Levin, before you walk away, you said you'd been canvassing and heard that sentiment. In what areas have you been canvassing?
This is canvassing in the in and near downtown for, this is where you live, and would you be happy to see more housing, including taller buildings that you would need to look at, and, including affordable housing.
Thank you. I'm going to propose we take a 5-minute break. I got to use the restroom, guys. Let's go ahead and bring the meeting back to order. We're done with public comment now, and we can go ahead and bring it up to council questions. Anyone have any questions from the staff report? No. Oh, yes. Councilmember Nash.
I'm wondering, are we going to be reviewing the priorities once in August then? Is that the idea? And getting more of a status update on these?
With regard to a status update, we could definitely transmit that. I think the biggest question surrounding the priorities in the work plan is how will the council's direction on recommendation from the subcommittees affect the resources available to continue working on the work plan as was envisioned earlier this year. Does that answer your question?
So I'm wondering, and actually maybe it will happen tomorrow, about the Middle Avenue pedestrian bicycle rail crossing. Is that what the rail subcommittee, we will get an update there and have a chance to discuss it?
We're going to discuss it tomorrow at the meeting. So why don't you clarify for us what are the things you want us to do right now, Nick? Because I'm getting the feeling right now that we need some direction. What are the items of clarity specifically that you need from us?
So as the council is aware, and as members of the public who may have received the council packets early, we did an early release of the council agenda for tonight and tomorrow night's council meetings. The goal was to get those out earlier so that folks could have an opportunity to review the information. At the time that those packets were prepared, we were under the assumption that the subcommittees would have a recommendation for this council to take action, which would then help inform this particular item. Because we don't have those at this point, there's no recommendation to the city council for action on the work plan at this time. What we would do, again, is meet with the subcommittees, continue to meet with the subcommittees over the course of the next several weeks, bring those recommendations to the council, and then the council could evaluate the impact of those recommendations on the work plan.
All right, so why don't we go ahead then and have this be an item that we're going to check in on then in the August meeting and move on. There's no action required for tonight and there's no direction. And we don't know yet what it is that we're still doing work in our subcommittees to know exactly what our directions are going to be on that. So I think that probably makes sense. Everyone, Councilmember Nash?
Well, I'm just wondering regarding the downtown specific plan, which I think looks like it's something that's likely a priority within our subcommittee. Is that something that we can actually start working on since it's already a priority before we reconfirm it in August?
I think the answer to the question is it depends on the recommendation from Subcommittee 1 for District 1. We're effectively talking about the same resources that would work on the planning project. For the council's, if the council does recall, the Connect Menlo is not on the current work plan. So when we envisioned the use of planning resources, we did not envision doing anything with Connect Menlo above and beyond sort of the cursory review. So it depends substantially on what District 1 requests, and then ultimately what the council decides on how to prioritize limited resources.
In August, is it possible to have some sort of plan as to how we might be able to add some resources and be able to work on both projects, if that is what it comes to? Or, and one of the, actually, go ahead, Ray.
Well, by implication, you guys are working on the downtown specific plan area, and you're going to come back with recommendations for it. By implication, with what you're doing within your subcommittee. So I think it's fair to say that we can look people in the eye and say that work has started. It just has started in a subcommittee with committee recommendations. I'm comfortable saying that. That's the focus of the area that you guys are definitely within. And so making those recommendations and taking the input that you're doing and then coming back and providing that to the council is going to be important as we go ahead and inform how we frame the specific plan reviewed by the council. I take it that way. I think people are in agreement to that. It's, yeah? Yeah? So I view it as the specific plan work has started and your subcommittee is looking at that topic. It's very clearly within the purview of what started your subcommittee. It addressed both housing and commercial. And so go for it and bring us your recommendations. We very clearly are working on recommendations with respect to Connect Menlo. Acknowledge that process has started. There will be recommendations coming out of that. And so, so I think in August, why don't we check in and see what you guys' recommendations are, if you've come to them, and then we can figure out how we get staff to supplement that. Because it may be that professional staff thinks based on what you guys are saying, we can handle it. It may be that they're going to say, you guys are nuts on the timeline that you want this, and this is what the timeline is to deliver it. But the good news is that most of the projects that we're talking about in these areas are extended over quite a long time period. So we have, well, in Connect Menlo they are. So we have quite a long time to actually talk about that. And the housing projects that you guys that I know are dear to your heart that you want to talk about, those projects don't yet exist. We have the time to go ahead and get them appropriately framed up. So is that comfortable?
I think it basically has to be. My concern is that we try and get more resources so that we can do both subcommittees' work at the end of the day.
Yeah, we just have to know what it is.
Right. And then I guess my other question is with regards to the development caps for both downtown plan, specific plan, and for Connect Menlo, is it possible to have, thank you so much for the project summary table that we've received, and with numbers for the Connect Menlo, is it possible to have some sort of discussion about that at some point soon and get more information, or is that something we should do offline, or what is the best way to do that, since probably several people are interested?
Could you be more specific about what kind of additional information you're looking for?
I would like to discuss I have questions about the numbers, and we could do it individually, but it seems like it might be an exercise that would be worthwhile for the entire council to be discussing.
So the answer is yes, but having looked at the August 20th and August 27th agendas, which would be a reasonable-ish time to bring it back, they're very full already.
And what are we exactly talking about? Because if we're just reviewing it, so there's that rule about meeting for meeting's sake. Are we just reviewing it, or is there a purpose behind the review attached to a work plan item? So, ideally what would happen is that the subcommittee would meet, come back with a recommendation of a policy goal it would want to review, and then within the framework of that, this would be supplement to inform that. Does that make sense?
I guess the way I heard the request was that just to have a fuller discussion about what the numbers mean, and so that there's a group understanding of what the proposals are and the projects are.
So it's like a study session?
Yeah, it could be a study session, I would think. Yeah.
Okay, but even then, so we could do it as a study session, but what I would be really helpful is if that there was some framework or some underlying policy purpose for that we're attaching that to. So that coming out of a recommendation from the subcommittee. So
I guess I am very interested in the numbers, and I put in a question last Friday to staff and have not, I know there's many, many things going on, so that's probably why I don't have an answer yet. But I'm just would like to better understand the numbers. I can do that offline individually if that's the best way to do it. For example, the cumulative projects and how they figure in, and also just where we got to, how we got the numbers we have, why they're different from the numbers we've received in the past, and just make sure that I understand what's going on. It's not to question the numbers, it's really to fully understand them.
that's fine. We can set it as a study session. It's fine. So we'll have to find a council meeting for a study session.
Actually, having said that, I'm also thinking that it may be something where I meet with staff separately, if that's all right, just before, because I would like to get answers this month if possible.
Sure.
Okay, how about this? How about you go ahead and meet with staff, and then if some other council member wants to bring it up as a study session, great. If after you meeting with it, you think there's an issue that rises to the level that your recommendation is the council look at it as a study session, happy to do it. But, so, anything, Councilmember Taylor? Vice Mayor Taylor.
Thank you. My concern is that, one, the Connect Menlo is not up for review, even though we can make recommendations through the subcommittee. And so how will that work? If we're making recommendations for the subcommittee that are specifically, at least I will be, about Connect Menlo.
So I think what Nick was indicating was that it was not currently within the work plan to be under review. However, since we have started this process, there are staff resources dedicated to it as such that we're going to have to make some decisions about what remains in the work plan and what doesn't.
So one of the other concerns that I have, and not just myself, but also my constituents, is that no immediate action is being taken. And so today is July 15th, and thinking about either August 20th or August 27th, and then a recommendation being made then, and nothing happening to either September or October. And so I would like to see whether it's a study session, an update on the subcommittees with recommendations happen sooner, at least for my district. And I believe that a study session is a good way to do that, because it'll give time, especially if those are the only two items there. It'll give time because we will have community input. But I just need to have some action taken sooner than later, not in 6 months, because to me, that's what I'm hearing. And that's my concern. And going back to the previous item on the agenda, I think things are out of order. I see too many documents that have the Connect Menlo General Plan update and circulation element as policy. And until that policy is changed, we're still moving forward. And I know there were suggestions about grandfathering things in. My concern is it looks as if business as usual and the concerns of the community have been skipped over. And so I just needed to say that. Thank you.
All right. So I think we have the input that you all, is there any more input that people want to provide, since there is no action to be taken tonight and this is going to be coming back to us in August? Is there anything else we want to share with staff or any other statements people want to make?
So I want to follow up on Mayor Pro Tem Taylor's comments. So is that the same study session that Councilmember Nash was talking about, or are you asking for a separate study session before the 20th and the 27th?
Yes, I am asking for a study session before the 20th or the 27th, and it would make sense to do it all in one instead of having two separate.
Okay, well, a follow-up on that. I thought we were going to meet with Councilmember Nash offline, and then only if there was an interest in bringing it back as a study session.
Right. So if Councilmember Nash and Councilmember Combs don't want to have a study session, then they don't have to. I'm requesting one. That way, the item happens before the next council meeting and a recommendation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I'm not. So we're talking about adding a new city council meeting before the next meeting on the 27th. For the 20th. Mr. Figueros.
Just clarification, and I apologize, I didn't quite catch the entire conversation there. But we are, if I understand the request correctly, we would hold a study session on the subcommittee's recommendations to the council. Is that?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, and so then the studies, the purpose of the study session is to inform, if I may ask, just
to make recommendations, specifically to make recommendations, and the policy framework would be Connect Menlo.
All right. So what we're saying is that we're going to meet. We're going to decide what we think the changes should be to Connect Menlo. We're going to give that to staff, and then staff's going to put a study session together by the 20th.
Or we can, no, definitely not this month. We can put together some recommendations. They're going to be, the recommendations, at least for myself, will be about Connect Menlo. So I'm just being forthright about that. And so the framework for me to you with policy would have to do with Connect Menlo. The reason I requested the moratorium hasn't changed. And so, and the information in the emails that I've already sent, that hasn't changed. So you have my framework. The recommendations aren't there yet, except for the air quality testing.
So if I could, just by way of process, talk through what I understand to be the staff's request from council over the next several meetings. So as was mentioned earlier, the City Council adopted work plan is the guiding sort of priorities that we are operating under until the City Council changes those priorities. On June 11th, the action the council took was to say that, wait a second, we would like to establish subcommittees to take a look at potential planning and zoning changes in two different areas, the first being District 1, the second being Districts 2 through 5. In order for us to provide the council with a recommendation on the impacts or the what the new work plan would look like, we need to first understand the scope of the subcommittee recommendations, and then secondarily, we need to understand what the city council, as a majority of the city council, directs to go forward. So, an example. Well, I don't want to go into examples, but that's process-wise what we need to do over the next several meetings. So, until we have the subcommittee's recommendations, and then the council's conversation about prioritizing, whether that be with new resources or existing resources, whatever the case may be, it's difficult for us to have a conversation on the work plan to figure out how we're going to realign resources so that we can start work on those. So that's where we are by way of process.
Yes, and that was why I brought up the question about Connect Menlo. Is if it's not on the work plan, but it's a part of this subcommittee, how does that work?
So the recommendations of the subcommittee will then be debated and considered by the full council, and the full council will make decision as to what aspects of the subcommittee's recommendations move forward and how we prioritize resources.
Okay. Thank you. That's fair.
Yeah, and my only concern is on trying to rush to get our recommendations to staff in time for an August 20th subcommittee on a full council discussion on changing Connect Menlo, is that it kind of looks like a fait accompli. In that, I mean, we've had meetings with a few residents. We've had a meeting with no stakeholders. We would have to get, I mean, we'd basically be saying that our subcommittee work was done and we were already making proposals to the council. I mean, that's pretty quick to do that. To then say to the council, we want you now to change Connect Menlo in this way based on that. I think one thing we might want to consider doing is, and to say that nothing's happening, I don't think is, I think we can make a compelling argument to residents who maybe be under the impression that nothing is happening, that indeed actually we've already started to have, we've had 3 meetings, one of those with quite a few staff members. We are now talking about changing our work plan substantially, affecting staff time in a number of areas in the city, dedicating time and resources to that, changing how our public process works with respect to planning commission review. I mean, we have taken substantial steps to change how this city operates. For the person who looks me in the eye and say, nothing's happened, I can look them in the eye and say, actually, quite a bit has happened in the way that the city has operated to address these concerns. But that being the case, there is a necessary public process and due process required to do this. And so what I would suggest that we would do is say, again, make sure that we have put together that process and timeline. And maybe what we can do is by August 20th, have out the end date of when our aim is to make that policy proposal to council of what we think needs to be done with Connect Menlo, with that date in mind, and then all the different things that will happen between now and then, so that people can say we are moving forward. But we are, like, this is not normal. This hasn't been how business has been conducted. And I can look any resident in the eye and tell them, trust me, this is not like, it's remarkable to say to people going in front of the Planning Commission, we're changing this process that's been in place for this long in this way, and we're changing our work plan in July, and basically in July, to take on a major planning effort in response. If the message to residents should be, we're taking this very seriously, and also to say that we're going to embark on looking at changes to the specific plan with respect to housing in the way that we are. It just can't be downplayed. It shouldn't be downplayed. It's substantial, and and frankly, regardless of what people want to say about the council, for our professional staff to be as flexible as they are with their work plan and the professionalism that they're approaching this with us to give us their best advice is remarkable. So I see a city working really hard to try to build up what I talked about earlier, trust with our community in a process that I'm proud of. And I think we should be proud of that and just make sure that we have a process that's bulletproof out of it.
Yes. And I appreciate that, and I do share your concerns, and I do appreciate the work that the staff has been doing, and also I know that this has been a complete change, but one of the reasons why I'm here is because there's a community that has felt overlooked historically, and I have to continue to push forward so that the next generation doesn't have to deal with the same thing the past 4 or 5 generations has. And so I am going to ask for the best, hope for the best, that we can move forward at a different pace. And I have had conversations with developers, not all at one time, but that definitely can happen. And they understand my perspective and my position. I need to look at what is equitable. We haven't had balanced growth in Menlo Park. It's been predominantly in 1 or 2 areas. And so how do you balance the growth is that you push until you reach equity. Equity is an investment with time, and it's an investment with financial resources. And so that's why I will stand my ground as asking for a study session sooner than later.
All right, for the study session, so I guess what we could do is have a study session before we make the recommendations.
I believe we can put together recommendations for the study session. I believe, and I said this in the June 25th meeting with staff, that the public has provided enough information. I have provided information. And so I believe we can use that to move forward. The February 2nd work plan that we had in this room, community members came out, they had public comment, they also submitted to CCIN March 26th, the Connect Menlo review, April 16th, the meeting in District 1, May, I don't know what the May date was, May 6th, and again on June 11th. And if we rewind 10 years ago, same comments. And so how do we disrupt that pattern is that we change what we do.
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, I only have sort of a kind of procedural question. So I understood Councilmember Nash's request for a study session, sort of looking at CAP numbers, development numbers. Is it really so completely sort of a sharing of information? Like, if we're talking about the recommendations of the subcommittee, does that have to, when that comes to council, does that come as a study session? It seems like to me that creates an unnecessary agenda item. Couldn't it just come as regular business to be voted on with the subcommittees coming with their recommendations?
Well, to me, you could do a study session to discuss it, right? But you can't. You can only give general direction at a study session. Yeah. So it would need then to come back for an action item at a future meeting.
So do you have to do the study session first? Couldn't you?
That's really at the discretion of the council.
Right. So like the subcommittees could come with their recommendations for a regular action item, right? And in theory, that would shorten the process if we're talking about sort of getting this going as quickly as possible. A study session seems like to me in this context, unless there is a sense that there's going to be, no real semblance of a consensus, then yes, a study session may make sense. But if it seems as though the subcommittees are coming with very specific sort of recommendations after sort of going back and forth with staff, then it would sort of be best teed up for an action item.
I think you can do it either way.
Right.
Does anyone have any recommendations how to move forward? All right, so what we'll do is we'll revisit this in August. What I'd like to do is have Vice Mayor Taylor meet with staff and try to see if we can get some framing around a study session item. Councilmember Nash is going to be meeting with staff to get framing around a study session item. Is everyone agreeable to that?
I have a follow-up question just based on what Councilmember Combs said about shortening the process. Ms. Jerome Robinson, you said that it didn't matter whether it was a recommendation at a meeting or a study session that would shorten the process?
No, I said you could approach it both ways, or what I meant to say was you can approach it, you can do a study session first and then discuss those recommendations from the subcommittees, but you can only give general direction, so it would require an additional meeting to bring it back to the City Council for action.
And based on the information that I'm sharing, what do you suggest?
I think it needs to come. I think the subcommittee needs to come up with their recommendations. I think it would be. I think either approach can work. It depends on how much discussion the council's going to need to have to get to be ready for action.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nash.
I want to thank staff for the early release of the reports. That was really helpful, and it sounds like the next meeting is also going to be a lot to go through, and if we could continue early release of reports when possible, that would be extremely helpful and appreciated.
So I would say that I think it's important that in the subcommittee's discussion on policies and procedures, that this is an issue that is discussed for a final recommendation. It is our intention to do the early release, but I would say, and this was not a fair barometer of how well the meetings on the 7/15 and 7/16, but it did require or result in some confusion because of the moving around of agenda items, and the pagination didn't work properly. But yes, we would like to try and do it again.
Great, excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Gross. All right, our next item, so let's go ahead and just go back to the other item now and see if we can wrap that up. So that was item E5, E3. E3, thank you. Discretionary projects approval. How do anyone want to offer how they feel on it? Are people still wedded to, they want it to be compulsory every time? Or are people comfortable with compulsory notification by council and review and then decision by council, or should it just come to the council? Any thoughts? Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, just like that. Well, so initially the idea of requiring projects that now stop at the Planning Commission for final review, requiring them to come to council was, as a matter of course, was my idea. So I like the idea, right? But I would just like that. I am open to this idea of I agree that is, I think the mayor talked a lot about sort of the change that's happening, that's happened recently. I mean, I think I am comfortable with the idea of changing a little bit, or not as much initially, and sort of starting this process of exercising this muscle of the council having more clarity and transparency into what's happening on the Planning Commission, and making clear the availability and the opportunity for members of the City Council to pull them for review, and also something reinforcing or reminding residents that their council members also have those rights and abilities. So in that way, again, like I say, I can be comfortable with the sort of notification requirement. But if the consensus, and I hear what the mayor is saying about a desire to have some consensus, if the consensus is back to that original idea of a mandatory appeal, then again, if that's part of the change, I can also sort of go along with that too. So I don't know if that offers any additional clarity.
It's fair. It's fair. It's where you are. It's fair. It's honest. Councilmember Nash.
I am leaning toward the email system and the CCIN system, because I think that will give us an idea of what the workload is, how many projects are actually coming through, and also let us set a threshold when we see the projects. I guess I would recommend that we do a review at 6 months rather than a year. But that would allow us to see what is coming to, what the actions are for the Planning Commission, and actually have a reasonable threshold. Thank you.
I see merit in both. Obviously, I mean, candidly, from a staff resource perspective, I just feel bad making staff write reports for things that, frankly, are going to come to us and no one's going to have a disagreement with. That being said, the reason why we're doing this is to build trust, and I want us to do this as a team. So I'd like us to be all together, if we can be. I think that's what's the most important message is that we're a team coming out of this. So I think that's important for trust on the council and also trust in the community. If it results in more work for staff, we are very much appreciative of the work that you do to help us with that. Councilmember Carlton.
I just want to reiterate that if we want to, as a group, if we want to review everything, that's fine. Let's review everything. I think the CCIN gives us better transparency for everyone involved, and it gives us flexibility, to Mayor Mueller's point.
Where are you at?
But I don't mean to say that I will have a word to say if we decide to review everything. That's totally fine. That's not why I support that alternative.
Well, I was not to put you on the spot, but I was going to ask the vice mayor to possibly propose a motion that's most comfortable for her, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Combs. You were reading my mind. I was going to propose a motion with Bill's help because I didn't have the wording for it. I'm comfortable with having an electronic, an email, and then doing a review in 6 months. With all the other work that we are doing on the council and also our staff, I'm comfortable with that.
I'll second that.
Okay, Bill, we need your help.
So this would be to adopt a resolution directing the community development staff to send out, post a notice email to the city council to CC in for final approval of actions by the planning commission at the bonus level in either Connect Menlo or the downtown El Camino Real specific plan, and non-commercial bonus level projects and non-commercial projects exceeding 10,000 square feet. Again, non-commercial projects any place in the city. Provide notice and advise the council that if they want to issue an appeal, that they, what the timeline is for filing an appeal, and the public for those actions. It would be a short summary and a link to the Planning Commission staff report in that communication. And the resolution would also include the waiver of an appeal fee for any council member that files an appeal during that period of time. And then it would provide for a review of this procedure 6 months from implementation.
So let's add that in. Someone, you can add that in.
So it was all any non-residential.
I mean, sorry, non-residential. I meant non-residential. Did I say non-commercial?
Yes, and
yeah. Sorry, non-residential.
Non-residential, and then also any non-residential. What net 10,000 square feet or more?
Yes, correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nash.
Would that include residential mixed use?
It would include
over
residential mixed
2/3?
use with less than 2/3 of the square footage that is residential.
Okay. Let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead now and move on to item E6. Authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with LSA Associates, Inc. to prepare an environmental impact report for the proposed Menlo Uptown project with 483 multifamily dwelling units and 2,000 square feet of commercial uses at 141 Jefferson Drive and 180 to 186 Constitution Drive for the amount of $197,574,000 and future augments as may be necessary to complete the environmental review for the proposed project. Assistant Community Development Director Deanna Chow and Senior Planner Tom Smith will be available for questions. Do we have a presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Staff does not have a presentation prepared, but we are available for questions.
Okay. We can go ahead and take public comment and then take questions. So our first public comment speaker this evening is Lynn Bramlett.
Thank you, Council. I'm very concerned about this project moving forward, and my concern is that if projects continue to go through, the development will be maxed before we fix the problems with Connect Menlo. To me, a balance would be if we're waiting to fix some of the problems, we also wait on EIRs at the bonus level development. The developer can choose to scale back or, wait a month or whatever we're talking about in terms of having some solutions. I do think moving ahead gives a project momentum. To me, it implies an endorsement, even though I realize the staff report said it did not. It raises expectations, and it also will take up a lot of staff time. In terms of this particular project, I think it's too big for its space, and we need to I would like council to consider the cumulative impacts of developments in District 1. With all that, I'm all for affordable housing, more housing. In fact, this Saturday I'm going out with Angie Evans, walking around to try to, I believe, generate support toward the idea. I'm not fully, I'm trying to help with that. I'd like you to pause this from moving to the next phase. I also think it would be a good idea, in connection with our discussion of Connect Menlo and so forth, that we take a look at the original program level EIR. That was passed in Resolution 6356. And throughout, and I've also read the comments, not all, because it feels, it's this thick. I have carefully read the resolution. Serious impacts were noted from the beginning, but they were overridden toward the goal of the benefit, which is mainly revenue. For example, it said the city has found that the project, meaning Connect Menlo, will result in project and cumulative significant adverse environmental impacts related to air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, population and housing, and traffic and circulation that cannot be avoided following adoption. But the recommendation was it's more important for the economic benefit. And there are a few other benefits listed that I think would be a good idea to review again to see, does council agree that we've seen those benefits? Because individual EIRs then can cite a program level EIR and have more of an abbreviated EIR, so it's connected. And I think we should go back and look at the original program level EIR for Connect Menlo before we allow more of these projects to go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramlett. Our next speaker this evening on this topic is Adina Levin.
Good evening, council members. Dina Levin, Menlo Park resident, speaking for self. And the comment that I have is a little bit narrower than the previous speaker, but it does go back to the Connect Menlo process, where in that Connect Menlo process, there was a discussion about having, the overall goal was to create live, work, and play neighborhoods. I think we left out shop because maybe play sounds more fun than shopping, but people need to, have services near where they live so people don't need to drive around everywhere and create traffic. And the idea was having two nodes, two areas that would be walkable, that people could, if they live near work, could potentially walk or bicycle, not have to drive to work, and then also that had services nearby. And so in the area that's being proposed as Willow Village is being developed in that manner, where there are people who would be near work and have services. But so far in the area by the Jefferson and Constitution and this other area, we're seeing apartment buildings being proposed, and they have, little bitty corner store type areas, but not really an area with services that's a neighborhood where you can get what you need without getting in a car. And so my question is it appropriate to encourage this development itself to include those services, or for the city and the planning department to figure out where those services are going to go in that area and how that will be developed, so that we won't just have people going home and sleeping, but that can have the services that compose a neighborhood, and would welcome thoughts from the council about how that can be developed as a neighborhood and not just an apartment building plunked here, an apartment building plunked there. So either in this or figure out where it's going to go nearby. If it's going to have housing, it should have services. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're up here now for comments. I'm just going to make a comment for the record that I think is of note, that this applicant certainly is on notice that this time we're looking at Connect Menlo and the zoning of Connect Menlo and the issues surrounding that in Connect Menlo, and has chosen to proceed forward with the EIR while that pending, but certainly they're on notice that we're doing all of that at the time of the submission of their EIR. And I wanted to make a comment of that on the record. Also wanted to indicate to Ms. Levin's point that actually I agree with you. I think this project is missing mixed use. I think that a place for the community and the modulation that you would expect to see. And those are comments, frankly, that I was said to the applicant, that I don't see much in this in terms of items for the community. I think it's a missed opportunity. But that being said, the applicant has a right to bring forward their EIR, and even if we had a moratorium in place right now, they would have the right to bring forward and submit their EIR. They just there's not really a process legally by which that would have stopped that. So, but I want people to understand that even with the moratorium in place, that would have not stopped the applicant from being able to go ahead and submit their EIR this evening. Councilmember Carlton.
First line of my note is we have to process applications legally, but I really want to emphasize that this is not an approval. This is just moving forward in the legal process. And the EIR gives us teeth that we use in the development agreement to be able to say no, or be able to say this is what we want and this is what we need to have in terms of development. I have a few questions. When we did the development agreement with Greenheart, we did direct, we wanted X types of businesses to be there. Mr. McClure, is there anything that prevents us as we move forward on this and as we get the EIR and we're able to start moving into whatever phase is appropriate, would we be able to, in that negotiation process, help specify we want a pharmacy, we want specific types of businesses zoned, or at least in the negotiation we would appreciate those being highly prioritized?
So this project does not require a development agreement, so we would not be able to do it through that process. The City Council ultimately, through the review process, may have some ability to affect what those changes are through, you may have to adopt a statement of overriding considerations to approve the project. There may be some flexibility, latitude to require, condition. But again, by starting the EIR process, approving the contract, it is in no way a commitment to approve the project, even with conditions or even with caveats and those kinds of things.
Right. And I assume the developers are professional developers. They are aware of the risks involved in moving forward at this time. One of the things I would like to see, not only in this, but in pretty much everything else that comes forward, it would be really nice, the norm, because I keep asking for this, and I don't think I've actually received it. Every time we get one of these, now I realize that the grand scheme of how this works is that every specific project won't balance out on a jobs housing balance, because some are all housing and some are all office, and the idea is that they balance out. Unfortunately, what's happening is they're not. So I actually am curious to see when we get mixed use how that does balance out, because it would be nice to know project by project, is this helping us or is this hurting us as we move forward? When it's all housing and all office, it's easy to see. But when it's mixed, it's more difficult. So it would be nice when we get this back if we say the jobs housing, best case, worst case, as we move forward with this. Are we able to do something like that, just to give us an indication of what we're dealing with in terms of jobs housing, because it is so critical?
mean, this is basically a residential project with a very small amount of mixed use, so there's really no question about what the balance of this project is, but I don't remember what the
I'm just saying in
specific-
general, it would be nice with mixed use to be able to have that information at hand, to be able to say, oh, this is helping us X amount or hurting us X amount.
Sure, we can look at what the number of residents that it would generate as well as the number of employees that the project would generate.
Okay, great. And in terms of traffic, one of the things I've learned in my, 7 years here, is that sometimes 1 + 1 = 5, and you get compound issues. And when the EIR looks at traffic, is it going to consider the other things being built around it, or singularly this specific project? Because you see where I'm getting at.
There will be a cumulative component to that, so it'll look at the proposed project in addition to the other projects that are under construction, approved, or pending.
Okay, great. So we'll even consider the pending thing so that we can see this as a whole, because it's very difficult, to Vice Mayor Taylor's point, when there's so many moving parts. We want to make sure that we stay absolutely on top of this and that the EIR is as accurate as possible for that environment so that we really know what the impacts are going to be.
Yes.
And just so you're aware, it's a cumulative impact, not just of development in Menlo Park, but outside of Menlo Park as well.
Okay, great. There was another question I had about the... Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
So, Bill, my memory is that an EIR can be done for like a full load, but nothing after you do an EIR, like you don't have to do a second one if the load decreases, right? So we talked about that in a specific plan. So for instance, for the resident who's saying you're letting this EIR go forward at this specific density, there's actually no prejudice to the applicant if somehow later there was zoning and that was a less of a density because you've done an EIR for a bigger density to cover it, right?
Right. I mean, one of the things that's done as part of an EIR is you're looking at the project as it's proposed, requested, but it also looks at other alternatives, and I don't know how many alternatives this is looking at or what the alternatives are, but that's part of the EIR analysis, and so it identifies then what is the kind of environmentally superior alternative as part of the EIR. And council may say, when the EIR comes in, we're not going to approve the project at this requested density. You're going to have to reduce the density to X or whatever.
Okay.
In my memory is why if they're planning to build, say, 18, they'll EIR for 20, just to make sure that they're covered as they go down. So the worst case scenario is usually beyond what'll ever get built.
Usually you're evaluating the project that they really want to build and that they've designed and that they're hoping, and that's not always to the maximum that's permitted under the zoning and the general plan, but again, they may have some negotiating ability to downsize the project and still make it pencil.
Okay.
Right.
Now, secondarily, things that aren't affected by the EIR, but the subcommittee is looking at them, will have no effect on the EIR, could be things like the inclusionary affordable housing or green standards, REACH codes, architectural control. All of those things, again, are going to be of no prejudice to the applicant if they're things that the subcommittee look at later on and make recommendations on.
Yeah, I mean, until the project is approved, until a project is approved and they actually start work, they're subject to any changes in our zoning code, general plan, et cetera. And so if there are changes along the way during this EIR process that would adopt REACH codes or change the density or, bless you, or certain other changes, they would be subject to those changes in the city codes unless they were exempted at the time that was adopted. So sometimes when councils adopt a change in the zoning ordinance, it might grandfather those applications that are in effect. Mm-hmm. But that oftentimes that's not the case. Nothing is grandfathered. And
right. So because I want to make that point to the resident who's concerned, who's advocating that the density should be dropped and that there should be other changes to zoning as a result of the subcommittee work, that all of that can still happen at this EIR, that the EIR is actually at the maximum density allowed that they're pursuing, which the council can reduce the density. The EIR will still cover that because it's looking at the maximum density. And all of those other things, inclusionary housing, if we want to increase that over where it is now, we can do that. That doesn't obviously affect the number of people, the density within we can look at architectural control, we can look at green standards, we can look at there's a number of other levers still left to us, in addition to looking at the density that resident might be wanting us to look at.
And that is correct. And the one caveat to that is we being the city of Menlo Park and the applicant, are subject to whatever changes in laws that may occur at a state level. And
I understand. So SB 330 is hanging out there over us.
Yeah. And it may prevent, or one of its progeny may prevent the city from reducing density.
Right. But and I've been candid with residents about that. We've been candid with residents about that. But what I wanted to make sure tonight was, again, keeping in mind trust in the process, is that the EIR going forward, to those who feel like they are part of an advocacy in a process with the subcommittees, is that this has not changed their standing to advocate for that this evening. It's not like we're going forward in a subcommittee process that somehow now is irrelevant because this EIR is moving forward. It's not affected, basically, because the EIR moving forward. And I just wanted to make sure that people did understand that and have faith in the process. So, any other, Councilmember Combs?
Yeah, so I just want to sort of follow up on, I think, concepts that Councilmember Carlton and the mayor have brought up. So we got letters into CCIN asking us, in the spirit of the moratorium, to not approve this process or to delay it. And part of the counsel that you provided is that we actually have a legal obligation to approve this or to allow the EIR to continue. So what's your response to the residents who say, well, then that's always going to be the rationale, right, for approving it? And so when you're looking at the project, then the rationale will be, well, you have a legal obligation to approve it or something very similar to it. That this sort of rationale just gets moved from one stage to another, and at the end of the day, you have the project that the applicant wanted in the first place, and that there's been no real attempt by the community and its political leaders to respond to this desire for a pause or some sort of look at the impacts of development.
Sure. So let me kind of divide it into two parts. The first part is the issue of the city's legal obligation to process an application, even if it thinks it's a bad application, and as a policy matter, it has questions about whether it should be approved or not. Unless and until the zoning ordinance and the general plan are amended to essentially prohibit approval of a project, of the project for which they're applying, until that's modified to basically reduce the density, we have to process an application. We can refuse to process an application that is inconsistent with our zoning ordinance or inconsistent with a general plan. Courts are clear on that. But unless and until those are modified and changed and an application comes in that meets the technical legal requirements and standards set forth in our zoning ordinance and the general plan, there is a legal obligation to process it. And if we refuse to do that, then we are at some legal exposure for refusing to do that. If we had adopted a moratorium, we still would not be able to deny processing the application because, again, the law has not changed, the zoning ordinance has not changed, the general plan has not changed, and there are specific cases that have ruled that a moratorium cannot prohibit accepting applications, it cannot prohibit the processing of applications, and the reverse is also true. There's a whole bunch of cases that say that you're legally obligated to act reasonably in processing applications. And so that's kind of the framework that we're stuck with. And people generally don't understand that, because logically, if we're adopting a moratorium, then we should be able to put everything on hold. But the courts have said no, that's not the case. So that's kind of the processing piece. When it comes to approving a project, the fact that a project fits, and again, there are different kinds of projects and there are different laws that apply. But when it comes to approving projects, you have more discretion to deny and approve a project, to disapprove a project, or conditionally approve a project, reducing the density, et cetera, the impacts of a project. And an environmental impact report oftentimes identifies significant unmitigated impacts that just can't be fully mitigated through adoption of mitigation measures or conditions of approval. And when that occurs, in order to approve a project, the council has to approve what's called a statement of overriding considerations. That is essentially, notwithstanding that there are significant environmental impacts that will result from this project, we find that there are such benefits to the community, to the city, whatever, that we as a council, or you as a council, are going to go ahead and approve that project, even though there are some unmitigated impacts. You still need to try to mitigate them to the best that you can, but if there's unmitigated impacts, you still approve it. And I think one of the speakers talked about, there are significant environmental impacts that are identified as part of Connect Menlo, but the council adopted a statement of overriding considerations that said the overall benefit of this Connect Menlo and what could occur under it, that those benefits outweighed the significant environmental impacts that would result from development under Connect Menlo. So,
and the Downtown Specific Plan.
And the same for the Downtown Specific Plan, and the same for almost every single project, because most projects end up with some unmitigated traffic impacts. That, to 101, to Willow Road, because as a policy matter, we're not going to widen Willow Road west of, and our general plan says we're not going to widen it. And so adding, 5 cars, 10 cars, 50 cars, whatever, is going to be an unmitigated impact, because you can't do that. So there almost always are going to be some unmitigated impacts, which then gives a council greater discretion to say, no, the impacts of this project are so significant we can't approve that. So that's kind of in the CEQA area. For residential projects, there's a whole new body of law, the Housing Accountability Act, that the state has adopted, that is limiting some of the discretion of city councils and decision-making bodies to deny a project unless they make findings that it violates or it is not consistent with objective standards that were in place. And so if it meets all of the objective standards and it's just subjective reasons for denial, there may be some limitations on denying a residential project, and that is it's either 100% residential or not less than 2/3 residential under the Housing Accountability Act. And initially, when that statute was adopted, it only applied to affordable housing projects, and then the courts have interpreted it to apply to market rate housing projects as well as affordable housing projects. So today there is more. There's less ability, even on environmental reasons. There's less ability to deny. I mean, there's still some ability, and CEQA is one of the tools because it sets forth some objective standards. But again, it's going to depend on what the EIR discloses and what the information is, what the council has done with the general plan, zoning ordinance between now and when that project comes before you for approval, what the state legislature does. And so while you might have greater discretion today to deny a project when it comes to you because maybe there are unmitigated impacts as a result of the project, that may be different by the time the project gets to you. And so the advice may be, different at that time. And that's kind of the difficulty, but it doesn't obviate the requirement that ultimately, at some point, city can't act unreasonably in delaying and refusing to process an application. Now, the developer's hearing all of this, or the applicant is hearing all of this and understanding the concerns that the council has, and they have to make a business decision. Do they move forward with the EIR process while some of this stuff is in flux? And ultimately, that's their financial decision that they make as to, whether to spend the money and move forward, knowing that some of these things might be changing between now and, when an ultimate project comes before the Planning Commission and comes before you.
That was my point and opened with Vice Mayor Taylor.
I don't know if I want to ask this now. So my question is, based on the information you just gave us, and then also Councilmember Combs' question, we don't have the option to all vote no.
Well, I mean, if there was something that specifically relates to this contract, this project, that you felt was not covered by the contract in the EIR, and you felt that more needed to be, or you had questions about the contract and the EIR itself, that there could be the item could be delayed, continued, to come back to respond to those questions and issues. But ultimately, the applicant has the right to have the application processed by the city. Would I say, if you voted to table this until the August 20th meeting, would we be, exposed to the applicant by refusing to approve it tonight? I don't think we have significant exposure if there were some issue with this contract and you wanted to delay it. If the purpose is you want to delay it to the point where we've acted on zoning ordinance changes in general plan, the longer that delay, the greater the exposure we have, because an applicant could actually file an action to force us to act, and then we have some liability and exposure in not processing.
Okay, any other questions from council members? Okay.
Yeah, just for clarity, oh no, please.
The lights, come on. Drew, you were first, then Councilmember
I was going to
Nash.
say, just for clarity, we can vote whichever way we want, right? We can deny this right now. You're just saying that don't be surprised if you get sued if you deny it, right?
You got it.
Okay.
Right. And the exposure is, we may have to pay attorney's fees, and there may be some cost to do that. I don't know that if we do or we don't.
Councilmember Nash.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but I was wondering if the applicant would be interested in responding at all.
Sure, I'm happy to. Andrew Morcos, Greystar, applicant for this project. Our response is that, the current zoning is in place, and that's the basis under which that we entered this project. And we worked hard on it, and I think the city attorney has outlined that this isn't an endorsement on council's part, and we fully understand that, and we fully understand council is undertaking a review of District 1 as a whole. And as Mayor Mueller stated, this is an upper limit of what could be considered, and we understand that. And so we would appreciate moving forward, and we'll continue to do outreach and discuss with council members, planning commissioners, and the community at large to come to an agreement on what this project wants to be. So we're here to work together.
Mr. Marcus, thank you for your candor and acknowledgement on the record. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Vice Mayor Taylor.
I have a question for, I guess, staff. I'm not sure if this is Bill or Deanna. Has there been any EIRs in the city that have gone through the full process and then the project was denied by the council?
Well, I know that Dave Bohannon had a project that was denied when Steve Schmidt was on the council. It had gone through the Planning Commission, and I think it had done an EIR. I can't remember if it was a negative declaration or an EIR, but essentially it was, I think it's actually one of the two sites that ended up as part of the Gateway project, but it was, 7 years earlier than that.
Did Dairy also?
The Dairy project was approved, and then there was a threat of then there was a referendum that was circulated.
They withdrew before there was any decision made.
Right, and then they basically didn't push forward with the project, and the council never acted, so it didn't rescind the approval, but by operation of law, it was suspended. The approval is suspended, but it was a referendum petition that stopped it. But that there may have been some other ones that projects have been modified or changed as a result of an EIR, but not necessarily denied, and kind of negotiated reduction in the size or changes in a project to make it, I'm going to say, politically acceptable.
I did vote against Connect Menlo. People do vote against. People do vote against. It happens.
And there's certainly been a number of projects that have not been a unanimous vote.
Right.
I have a few questions. There's another application that Greystar submitted on a different street. I think it's on. It's on Independence. It's on Independence. What's the number of housing units in that project?
So that proposal at 115 Independence and 104 110 Constitution, also referred to as Menlo Portal, is proposed at 320 units.
And are any of those, do any of those have home ownership, as the project on Jefferson does?
I believe these are all rental.
And then what's the zoning on Haven Avenue for Elon?
So Elon, Greystar's project at 3645 Haven Avenue is R4S.
How many units per acre?
I believe it's 40 dwelling units to the acre.
Okay. Andrew, I really appreciate the white paper that you sent to the council members a couple months ago when you first started this process. And I appreciate you for being here. So my other question has to do with the air quality. Well, it's more of a comment. Just thinking about that area, there isn't any residential in there currently, and it is near the freeway. And so I'm not sure if a part of the project there are some mitigations already being discussed around how to filter air in the units, or enclosing certain areas that should be outside just because of the geographical location. But I'm concerned about that amount of people living in an area that doesn't have any services. Also, the school district, it's in Redwood City School District, and that school district, they are closing schools. They've already closed 2. So just some concerns of mine. And I know that SB 330 has been brought up repeatedly, but I have some information from the Planning Commission in San Francisco about how if the zoning is shared throughout the city, you don't have to upzone up to 100 units in one area. You could share it throughout the city. It doesn't have to be in one area, and it doesn't affect SB 30 at all. But a couple other things that we aren't concerned with, or at least haven't been recently, and that is SB 1000. It's about environmental justice. AB 617 is also about environmental justice, and AB 398 is also about environmental justice. And so when I think about building new communities, current communities, how we breathe is very important, and it should be the priority of any project. So I personally don't support it because of that. And I think it's unfair to put people in an area that isn't designed for residential. There needs to be essential services so that we're not commuting out, and to assume everyone is going to use, or part of the population is going to use, whether it's Uber Eats or DoorDash or Amazon, which means more vehicle trips. I think before this project is even considered, that we need to look at some type of shuttle system. We have 290 shuttle buses from one company in that area, on top of the other, I think there's at least 8 or 9. Those are things that need to be looked at as well. That area is very busy. And it would be nice if you had a picture up just so that we can see. Especially since it's right across the street from the high school that's opening in a few weeks. It's just the location, and I know everyone says the location of the high school is bad. I just think that area, it wasn't meant for residential or schooling. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Nash.
I guess just overall my comments are that, as I keep repeating, I'm very concerned about the jobs housing imbalance, and this project does add housing, which is positive. However, this area has no neighborhood services, and we're adding housing without essential services nearby. And that includes groceries, pharmacy, even elementary school. There's nothing nearby. Tide High School will be nearby. But traffic is going to be is a big problem. There's 290 Facebook shuttle buses that we just learned are using Chrysler Drive and Jefferson Drive to transport Facebook employees. This was in the Complete Streets Commission report that for last Wednesday's meeting. So we've got 290 buses on that street, plus the smaller shuttle buses, bikes, all the single occupancy vehicles. And we've got a high school that's starting up across the street. And again, there's no nearby essential services. I think that's something that really needs to be addressed. I think air quality is a big issue to be addressed in the EIR if it goes forward. I'm wondering how one gets alternatives into the EIR for studying perhaps more commercial retail there. Again, it's housing, but with no infrastructure there. Thank you.
So mixed use option being one of the alternatives.
Well, beyond the 2,000 square feet that are there.
Right. No, I would support that being an alternative as well to be studied. And actually that does need to be specifically identified, because I think the impact is going to be greater than the load, because mixed use, I think, believes that the commercial will have a greater impact than the residential. So, is there support to study that as an alternative? More mixed use into the project? Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, there's an agreement on council for that.
And when you're talking about mixed use, you're talking about essential services to serve the residents themselves, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, not more offices.
No, I understand, but also there are other kinds of mixed uses that may not be serving the residents.
Right.
And trying to start a neighborhood there.
Yeah, it's cafes, it's grocery stores, pharmacies, it's services. Restaurant. Vice Mayor Taylor.
Is it possible to increase the number of ownership? I know that there's townhouses, right, that are up for ownership. Is it possible to increase the numbers? Also, does the applicant choose the consultant or does the city? I'm speaking specifically about the
EIR consultant?
The Kaiser Marston, the consultant for the housing piece of the EIR.
These are consultants that are hired by the city. And we exclude consultants that are working at the same time for the developer on a different project or something. And it's part of the conflicts check that we do when we're putting out RFPs and hiring these consultants.
So are these the consultants the only one that are on the list for Menlo Park, or are there other consultants? I'm just concerned because they've already handled 2 big projects, one for Menlo Park, another for Stanford. And I'm just concerned because there was a lot of misinformation in there. At least that's what I felt.
So for the housing and population analysis, for a separate project, we have reached out to another consultant. I don't believe we received a response. We have received a response from Kaiser Marston. They do have familiarity with the city. As you mentioned, they have worked on other projects, and so we've continued to request a proposal from them, and it's been supported by the applicant. And so we're seeking the council's approval here.
But if you do have specific concerns about information or something that from a previous study, if you would reach out maybe to Deanna and share what that information or concerns are so that we can look at that, be aware of that if we move forward with Kaiser Marston as part of that study.
Just a comment to my colleagues, this has really been a very thoughtful discussion. I appreciate it very much. I've appreciated it. I think we're ready to make a motion and move on if folks are ready. Is there any last thoughts before we do that? No, we good? All right, so who wants to make a motion? Councilmember Combs has made the motion. Who wants to second it? Councilmember Carlton has seconded it. Let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passes 4-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Taylor dissenting.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on now to our next item. Receive E7, receive and file a summary of outreach process and status update for transportation projects. We have a report from Assistant Public Works Together, Nikki Nagaya, who will make the presentation. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Mayor Mueller, council members, Nikki Nagaya, Assistant Public Works Director. So we don't have a detailed presentation for you tonight, but are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from my colleagues? No questions? All right. Wait, we're double checking just to make sure. E7. Transportation projects. E7, receive and file a summary of outreach process and status for transportation projects. Councilmember Nash.
I was wondering on the resurfacing of the Middle Avenue, if you could, it seems that there's several different projects that are sort of getting mixed together. If you can sort of pull that apart for us, please.
Sure. So in summary, the item before you outlines the outreach process that we've generally used to engage residents on projects as they come up. The Middle Avenue one, I'm sure the council remembers, is part of the reason why this is before you tonight. And so for Middle Avenue, there are really 3 different efforts going on within the Middle Corridor. And first is the Middle Avenue pedestrian bicycle crossing underneath the Caltrain railroad tracks that you mentioned earlier. It's in the council's work plan. The second is resurfacing Middle Avenue between Olive Street and San Mateo Drive. The summary of the status of that project was provided in the staff report. And was initiated earlier this year because we have grant funding for repaving the street planned for next summer. The third is the Complete Streets Commission's proposal that was outlined in the council's work plan for looking at the entirety of Middle Avenue from Olive Street all the way to El Camino Real. And that was the scope of their request was before the council in May. And definitely confused the resurfacing efforts that were under the planning for the resurfacing efforts that were underway.
Can you provide more information about the Middle Avenue? What's happening with that, the Middle Avenue from El Camino to Olive project?
The full extent of the commission's proposal?
Well, essentially, what I'm wondering is, my understanding was that the design was going to go into the transportation department and no longer be designed within the Complete Streets Commission, and that the Complete Streets Commission would be providing input before and after, but not actually doing the design itself, that the professional engineering staff would actually be doing the design?
Correct. So I think the commission's proposal that was brought before you was meant to be a scope of work. So it outlined the general request that came from the commission, but was not meant to be was not meant to be a project that the council was approving for installation. So we had envisioned that then it would get transferred to staff over time. We'd still need to identify resources in order to process the project and hire consultants to do the evaluation, hold community meetings to do the outreach and kind of the normal steps you would expect to see. But that was a request to kind of start that scoping process. You may remember parallels that the commission drew to the Oak Grove University bike improvement project as well. And so understand the confusions and the confusion and the concern that we heard about it when we were before you in May. And I think at this point in time, staff is not actively evaluating that proposal because of the resource question. And so it was through the council's work plan earlier this year referred to the Complete Streets Commission. We will need to then reevaluate as the work plan update continues through the council review process over the coming months, what resources we have available and how to prioritize that project for recommendation to the council to consider as part of the work plan.
Thank you. Understood that there's definitely resource constraints and all. What I would find helpful would be if it would now be transitioned to the project name that this council approved, which I believe was something like the Middle Avenue Complete Streets
Correct.
project or something like that, and that in future documents it shows up as that rather than, because I'm concerned that as it proceeds with this Complete Streets proposal, that perpetuates concerns. I've had a few people in the neighborhood reach out to me and alarmed that this was still proceeding.
Right, and that was part of the council's direction on the May agenda item. And so I realize as part of this staff report, we referenced the work plan staff report, which Originally, we intended to attach the Middle Avenue, what we call project on a page or scope of work, and that was not attached to the work plan item, but it does include the renaming. So the next time we bring that before you, you'll see the name has been changed, as well as all
Even
the
if
other.
It's the name and says AKA Complete Streets or something, just so that there starts to be some separation.
We made the edits to reference Complete Streets improvements, as well as the rest of the changes that the council requested in May. We just need to get that back before you so you can see the changes have been made.
Thank you.
Don't you love when someone from council throws out another request? There's been two accidents recently on Middle. I think within the last 6 weeks, there were 2 accidents of people speeding as they come down. I just want to see if there's enough there appropriate for a stop sign installation review to try to, or something. Something's happening there. I don't know what the heck is happening, but the speeds are really increasing, and we're starting to see very odd accidents as that seems seemingly becoming more and more of a cut-through corridor of people going down it at rates of speed to try to get to somewhere else faster as opposed to entering the neighborhood. So that's at least my layman's vision of what's probably happening there and why that's happening at that speed. It might be something else, but I know the speeds have increased there, and there have been a couple accidents where cars have lost control on that street. We need to take public comment, and I apologize to our public speakers for not calling you up earlier. So our first public speaker this evening is Jen Willison.
Such a long walk. Okay. Good evening again, Council. Jen Wallison with Parents for Safe Routes, and I appreciate Ms. Nagaya, Ms. Nagaya, for clarifying the 3 different Middle projects. I watched the May 21st Council meeting where you discussed Middle Avenue and also the public engagement process. And just watching it, I was cringing because there was so much confusion about which part of that process was being discussed. I think it's really important it's constantly clarified for the public. My comment really has to do with one of those 3 projects being the repaving, restriping portion between Olive and San Mateo. And unfortunately, and to no fault of staff, it seemed like it was a solution looking for a problem, the way the project was positioned, unfortunately, to the community. And I understand that there was a grant and there was a time constraint, and it was looking for utilizing and being very careful with taxpayer dollars, which I think is really honorable. But unfortunately, it was kind of going out there really fast instead of framing it first as a problem and then looking for the appropriate solution. Because I think if you looked at that stretch as a problem, you would see lots of things. You would see it might not be safe for people to walk down. There's not sidewalks along the whole thing. Clearly, walking across Middle can be very dangerous. There's biking, and there's going to be increased biking with the opening of 500 El Camino, and especially some potentially vulnerable cyclists. There's going to be increased driving. As Mayor Mueller pointed out, there already is increased driving, and the speeds is a huge issue. And if you were to look at that as the problem definition, you may see that the proposed solution of the repaving and the restriping, while honorable and it makes sense why it was brought up, was not sufficient, and why there was a lot of kind of public discomfort with that disconnect. So that was something that I noticed that I wanted to share with you. And then it brought up the point of public engagement in general. And I actually read the kind of the TIERS staff report that Mr. Pigueros had given. And it was looking at what level of public engagement is necessary, kind of from one end of the spectrum being to inform or why you're engaging, and the other end of the spectrum is to empower the residents. And I think along Middle is something that you really need to decide, what is it you're trying to accomplish with public engagement? And it seems that having the residents who live along the corridor kind of design the corridor might not be exactly the right place of public engagement. And so I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of confusion around that. So I appreciate you looking at this, and don't forget the students and the school community when doing any community engagement. If you're going to be doing a lot of community engagement, make sure it's in PTA newsletters. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Katie Baruzzi.
Thanks. Katie Baruzzi, Chair of Complete Streets Commission, speaking mostly for myself, but also a little bit about process. On Middle, couldn't agree more. I think we're almost hiding behind process here. This is an opportunity for council to lead. Middle is going to be an accident waiting to happen. So I hope that, it's almost backwards, like staff are kind of going through the processes of we're repaving, we're complete streets, let's look and see if we can restripe, let's go through this. And it's kind of bouncing up to council, but I think it should be bouncing down from council, especially since we know from the EIR, from the Middle Plaza, that Middle Avenue will be at 100% capacity when that development is fully operational. So I went back and looked at what they were expecting vehicle counts to be, et cetera, and it was really stark. Middle is going to be much, much, much worse. So people who are concerned about how kids will get across El Camino and down Middle are onto something, and I think we should be focusing on that, and I'd love to see you all lead. Thank you. O'Brien was a kind of an interesting situation. Got to speak fast. So the staff recommendation came to us, and again, this is kind of protocol. We're a complete streets city. When staff is resurfacing, they will periodically look at plans that we have in the city. Transportation master plan will be one of those, and try to figure out, were we supposed to add bike lanes here at some point, and can we do that in a cost-effective way, right? And so they're following protocol, and they came up with recommendations for us. We heard additional input from people at that meeting, and we tried very earnestly to wrestle with it. It was a long meeting. I've rewatched it twice because there was a lot that happened in it. And a lot of that did not get captured. I mean, the minutes, as we have agreed as a community, are pretty straightforward. It's kind of like, here are the actions that we took. But I would encourage you to maybe look a little bit at that discussion, because I think it reflects the degree to which Complete Streets is trying to kind of square a few different things. One is moving forward with things as a community that we've sort of collectively agreed to do. Another is trying to be sensitive to the needs of people that didn't come before us earlier. And then a third is this new sort of bewildering dimension of, if we say something like, yeah, staff, we'll go ahead and move forward with your thing, but if and only if you can go back out to the community and work with them and try to solve the problems that they've brought forward to us, and if you can also maybe add a speed study to that, suddenly we're getting into we're not really supposed to ask things like that of staff, right? Because we're a commission, not council. And so I think, but we did. And it didn't necessarily fully get conveyed. We wanted staff to kind of move forward with the recommendation, but if and only if they could solve the problems that these people have brought forward. So I can talk more with you about this. I'm running out of time. But I think Complete Streets kind of takes it on the chin sometimes. Either we're rubber stamping things that staff asks us to do, or we're trying to be more nuanced, and then getting into kind of different trouble with not necessarily having things fully conveyed. So I'd ask you to think about that. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Adina Levin.
Good evening, council members. Dina Levins, on Complete Streets, and speaking for myself, but with observations about the things relating to Complete Streets that are before you, and building on a couple of previous speakers. Starting with, I think that with regard to Complete Streets, I think there, as the city moves forward on the city's policies, the city council's strategy for Complete Streets, there's change in our community. There's been a decision that overall we want to be moving towards safety, and we want to be moving towards helping people get around with driving and walking and biking, and that is change, and how we can communicate around that, do public outreach, and also have council leader through change, and have commissioners as community members help with that change. That's a challenge, and I think we ran into a couple of those challenges. I wanted to thank Councilmember Nash for clarifying that the intent for the Complete Streets Commissioner's ideas about middle, were and always were going to be provided to professional staff. We are not engineers. We're not pretending to be engineers. And whatever confusion happened in having things that were illustrative drawings going out to the community and confusing the heck out of people, we need to make sure to not cause that confusion in the past that happened there, while contributing ideas, which are good, but not confusing people that something is engineering and it is not. With regard to O'Brien, we tried to do some of what we tried to do with the Drager's parking lot issue, where there was a real parking issue that community members brought. And we tried to make a recommendation. We have some community policies about shared parking. There is a lot of parking, but it's so inefficiently used, and there may be some opportunities for our community to use that parking more efficiently and share better. And that was what we recommended, but there were some things that were lost in the translation. And I think that we have a shared need with the commission and with staff and how to translate our policies for shared parking into things that work for community members, and not just to go back to, well, we all need our individual parking or it won't work. And lastly, once again, looking to the council members to lead, and even as we go through these communication challenges, to set the expectation that we are working toward a world with more safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levin. Mr. Guy, I wanted to make clear just for the public, what I'm saying to you when I'm saying about the stop sign is not that we should somehow do a process around transportation improvement that doesn't take into account outreach that would require outreach. What I'm saying is if there's a warrant requirement, and so that people understand what I mean by that, warrants are specific standards that engineers look at, and if they're met, then for a safety reason, there would be a transportation intervention such as a stop sign or something like that. And I'm just curious whether or not there's a warrant specifically that applies to it now, such when there's a warrant requirement, actually you don't do the outreach because it's a safety issue and you got to fix it right away. So
understood. And I think even when, unless there's an absolute emergency where staff would then put in a temporary measure and then come forward to the commission and council for review and approval of something more permanent, we would normally do the warrant analysis, take it forward to the Complete Streets Commission for a recommendation, and then come forward to the council. And each step would be noticed with residents within at least 500 feet getting a postcard or a letter from the city notifying them of the change.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. So thank you. Any other questions for professional staff? Vice Mayor Taylor.
Thank you. I have a question, and I believe this is maybe the second or third time I've asked, is when it comes to the parking removal, if you could have a list of where and then the total number of parking that's being removed, because I believe that is the concern of the O'Brien Street Coalition, is the amount of parking that's being recommended to be removed. And that's my only question.
Great.
Great. We can make that information available.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on now to informational items. There are no presentations, but staff is available for questions for item F1. Actually, I'm sorry, I have a public speaker for F1, Ms. Bramlett. So F1 is the Belhaven Child Development Center Self-Evaluation Report for fiscal year 2018-2019.
My comment was brought up earlier. I think documents like that need a budget and then an explanation in terms of why they need more revenue. So you discussed it. Appreciate that before. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any public speakers for item F2? Ms. Bramlett.
So I think we still need more financial specifics, although I appreciate that staff is trying. I know you have plans, or we have plans for an IT finance infrastructure. I'd like to be able to click on this kind of a dashboard and get more information, like I saw in an example today from Arizona. Just a few things I'll bring up here. For example, charges for services, more than 41 million. It makes me wonder, what were the services? I don't think we're talking about recreation fees. Where is the money coming in from? Where does it go when we get it? What fund? And then, I want to be able to have that kind of visibility. It just seemed like an awful lot of money. Other financing sources, almost $6 million. It makes me wonder, what is that? And then special projects expenditures, under expenditures, almost 14 million. So I'd like to be able to click and get a lot more specifics in this kind of report, and actually if IT dashboard would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, any other questions from council on item F1 or F2? No. We have city manager's report. No city manager's report. Any city council member reports? Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, this isn't a report, but a request, and maybe Bill can chime in if it's inappropriate. But so we know that there are a few people in the city engaged members in the community who have email lists, and I was wondering if we who have relationships with those people who have email lists would ask that when they do send out an email to their to residents, that they also send it to CCIN, because I think a lot of times we're getting emails that are a response of these email blasts that go out, but we have no clue because we might not be on that list. And so, again, I know there's nothing official the city can mandate a resident, a private citizen, to send CCIN, but I would ask my colleagues, the extent to which we have relationships with a few of those people that we know maintain pretty active lists in the city, that we ask that when they send out an email blast about some topic, that they do us the courtesy of also sending it to CCIN, so we're all on the same page.
I think that's an interesting idea, because I've many times wanted to respond, but I don't have access to that email to be able to respond. And CCIN would give us the ability to answer sometimes the real, sometimes the rhetorical questions that are posed.
I just always think of the surprise when you get 60 emails about a subject. You're like, what are they talking about?
60 identical emails.
Yeah. Okay, so any other council member reports? I think that's a great suggestion.
I have a question about the mosquito vector.
Okay.
So it hasn't really been an issue this year, but in previous years we've had mosquitoes come up that carry dengue fever. And it's a non-zero chance that eventually that will find its way up to us. So mosquitoes are actually a really serious issue that we deal with. And there are actually fines that can be had. Usually we don't. Usually the police work with people, or the mosquito vector people work with people to make sure that they remember to empty out water in the backyard. And we, I believe, all got the same email from CCIN about the backyard. How do we help these people not endanger the neighborhood by breeding more mosquitoes? Do we report that to the mosquito people, or what moves forward on that?
It has already been reported to the mosquito abatement, I'm not coming up with the right name, but the mosquito abatement district, they're aware.
So they'll work with the people to find a
Yes.
solution to help?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted
and
to
code
make sure.
compliance is also aware.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, if there's no other comments from anyone, the meeting's adjourned.